Rebirth as a Russian tycoon. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51, 2nd Battalion Commander, bring me my C4 explosives. In the United States, although there is no restriction on guns, many people have grown up playing with guns. But compared with Mawey's unlimited arms, this is really a small witch meeting a big witch. It is not at the same level at all. As the armed tank drove majestically from a distance, Mike, Alan and others couldn't help swallowing their saliva. They watched the T-90 tank drive steadily to the front of the trench. Then the engine was turned off, and a Russian instructor in camouflage uniform ran out of the tank in a hurry. It was in sharp contrast to the mighty and domineering main station tank under him. It seemed a little funny. At this time, a bodyguard next to him used a walkie-talkie to say to Mawey in the trench in the distance, "Master, it's okay." Received, Mawey said, and put the walkie-talkie back to its original place. Then he carefully prepared to blow up the tank with a grenade. To say that throwing a grenade is not a joke. If you meet a timid recruit, he may throw a grenade at your feet or not far away. When he is nervous, then you will be the unlucky one. Originally, Mawey wanted to use a PG-43 anti-tank grenade to blow up the tank. But after contact, he found that this anti-tank grenade is too heavy, and most people can't even throw it 15 meters. It is easy to hurt yourself in the end. So he asked the bodyguard to keep the hatch of the tank open when he came out. In this way, his anti-1 grenade has a chance to confuse the tank from the inside. Mike and Alan of Blizzard have never seen Mawey's game production method in their lives. It's really terrible. This T-90 tank must be at least more than $500,000. The chairman is going to blow it up and collect data? This is too awesome. Oh my god. The new boss is too fierce. But the data collected in this way will be more realistic, and the experience brought to the players will be better. These employees in Blizzard's R&D department have never seen such a shocking scene. While they were frightened, they also realized the purpose of Mawey's actions. It can be said that he was very professional. President Mike and Director Alan were speechless about what was about to happen. As the company's senior executives, they also considered more deeply than ordinary employees. For example, Blizzard originally wanted to develop a game. The French headquarters was only willing to allocate $300,000. Compared with the new boss Mawey, in order to make a sophisticated game, he was so bold to take out the main battle tank and collect explosion data. This move cost at least $500,000. It was totally incomparable to the old boss. Just as the two were thinking secretly, Mawey in the distance pulled off the fuse on the grenade. Then he exerted force with his right hand and threw it towards the T-90 tank in front. The moment the anti-1 grenade left his hand, it drew a beautiful arc in the air. Then it accurately hit the tank armor, and because of the reaction force, it bounced to the ground with a clang. There was a loud bang. The grenade exploded directly next to the tank. The amazing flames, with a strong explosive force, blew the soil on the ground everywhere. The thick smoke rose into the air in the explosion of metal shrapnel, and it also had a visible impact force, affecting everything around. To say that the grenade explosion scenes in the movie are all deceptive. Not only is the explosion scene too distorted, but the shrapnel splashing after the explosion is also completely wrong. It's like Mawey, who immediately covered his ears after throwing the grenade and fled into the trench without even looking at the explosion scene. The reason is that the flying gravel and shrapnel will cause range damage to the people around. Even if they are not blown up, they will at least be scratched. When the aftermath of the explosion dissipated, Mawey stood up from the trench and found that the green lawn in the distance had been blown into a shallow pit by the grenade. The T-90 tank behind was almost unscathed, with only a little damage to its armor. After seeing this, Mawey turned to the anti-explosion filming team and asked, "Did you film everything?" The filming team made an okay gesture. "We filmed everything, young master." "Well, go call the demolition expert. It's his turn," Mawey said, brushing off the dust on his body. The terrorists in Counter-Strike are equipped with C4 explosive packs. So they also need a demolition expert to go to the T-90 tank and install explosives. This job requires professionals. After all, C4 bombs are a kind of plastic explosive, also called polymer bonded explosives. C4 bombs with different shapes have different explosion directions and explosion ranges. If you are not careful, it may cause irreparable damage. Hearing Maweli actually say that he would call the demolition expert, Mike, Alan and others standing not far away felt that the situation seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. Demolition expert, is the chairman going to blow up the tank? A male employee guessed with wide eyes. I guess so. I don't know. I think it's better for us to stay away. The R&D colleagues standing around him had their minds blanked by the scene in front of them. They originally thought that they were just on a business trip to Russia to meet the company's new chairman. But they never expected that this business trip would be so thrilling. I'm afraid they will remember it for the rest of their lives. 5 minutes later, the demolition expert who was on standby outside the field entered the training ground carrying a mysterious black suitcase. Blizzard President Mike, Director Alan and others stared at him without blinking. The demolition expert had a thick beard and looked to be in his 40s. He was not tall, but very strong. He walked up to Maweli step by step and then asked him respectfully, Mr. Maweli, is the bomb installed under the T-90 tank? As a blasting expert, he was engaged in the study of explosion mechanics. He knew clearly how powerful the C4 bomb in his hand was. It could blow down a small adobe house of about 2 floors, and it could also easily overturn a bus with a nuclear load of about 20 people. He had provided guidance to many customers, but no customer had ever been so crazy as Maweli to play with C4 to blow up tanks. This was simply a waste of money. The world of the rich really didn't understand. It's better to put the bomb inside the tank. Maweli thought for a while and said, if the C4 bomb was installed inside the tank, I believe the explosion scene would be more shocking. Maweli had his men unload the shells and missiles in the tank in advance. In this way, the degree and range of the explosion could also be accurately estimated. Chapter 52 C4 Bombing Tanks. Okay, Mr. Maweli. Please arrange for your people to wear explosion-proof clothing and stay at least 150 meters away. After the blasting expert finished speaking, he carefully carried the suitcase in his hand and walked towards the T-90 tank. At this time, the bodyguards behind Maweli began to distribute the prepared explosion-proof clothing to everyone. That is, the bulky clothing worn by the bomb disposal expert in the movie. Before putting on the explosion-proof clothing, Maweli turned his head and said to the 7 employees of Blizzard, does anyone want to quit? It's not too late now. I want to stay and see. Chairman Maweli. President Mike took the lead in answering. It would be a pity to quit temporarily for such an experience that you will never have a second time in your life. I will stay too. Chairman Maweli. R&D Director Alan directly put on the explosion-proof clothing in his hand. It is impossible to quit, and others want to spend money to experience it, but there is no place to find it. Since the 2 senior executives took the lead in voting, the remaining 5 R&D personnel had to look at each other and compromise. They all followed suit and put on the explosion-proof clothing. Maweli's game data collection this time is not just as simple as recording the screen. He knows how to operate. If the edited content is embedded in the promotional video of the Counter-Strike game, it will surely cause a sensation in the gaming industry. Such a great gimmick alone can attract countless players around the world. Even if the game has not been released yet, players will be looking forward to it. When Maweli and others put on their explosion-proof suits, they saw the demolition expert who climbed into the tank to install the C4 bomb also climbed out of the tank boldly and carefully. And he was holding a black iron lump in his hand, which looked like it was used to detonate C4. Compared with the well-known TNT explosives, the power of C4 bombs is 1.5 times the same weight. In C4 explosives, the military will add a chemical reagent called passivator, which can reduce the strong stimulation from the outside world and prevent the explosives from detonating. It can only be detonated by electronic detonators, high voltage electricity and small scale explosions. Therefore, the plot of using bullets to blow up C4 bombs in many movies is unreasonable. Even if you set fire to it, it won't make the C4 explode. It will only make it burn and generate a lot of heat energy. Mr. Mawei, this is a detonator in my hand. I have installed the bomb, and it can be detonated at any time. In the concrete trench 150 meters away, the blasting expert handed the detonator to Mawei. Mawei carefully took the detonator and gently grasped the spring switch on the detonator. Now he only needs to squeeze the switch tightly and then relax. He can instantly detonate the T-90 tank 100 meters away. The Blizzard employees standing around him looked at the tank in the distance with expectation and anxiety. At this time, the expressions on many of their faces clearly said, "Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing?" In order to prepare the employees, Mawei counted down 3 seconds before detonating. 3, 2, 1. As he counted from 3 to 1, Mawei squeezed the detonator in his hand tightly, and then released it again. There were 2 metallic click sounds. Almost at the same time as he released the detonator, the T-90 tank 100 meters away suddenly seemed to be torn apart from the inside. The steel hatch on the roof of the tank was blown away directly. At the moment the hatch was blown away, the high temperature flames generated by the explosion were blown out of the tank at a speed of 8,000 meters per second by the shockwave. The terrifying high pressure shockwave blew up the entire roof of the tank. The red-hot flames, with extremely high temperatures, burned the surrounding air to distortion. Everything happened almost in an instant. Only high-speed cameras can capture these explosion details. The speed of light is much faster than the speed of sound. So when Mawei and others saw the explosion half a second later, they heard the huge noise that followed. Bang! The amazing explosion, together with the shock wave generated by the explosion, shocked everyone 100 meters away. Through the transparent mask of the explosion-proof suit, Mawei and others could clearly see the shock wave from far to near, and it continued to destroy everything it touched. The C4 explosion scenes in the movies were all deceptive. No matter how high the flames burned, or how magnificent the explosion scenes were, they could not imitate the powerful and invincible high explosive airflow. The explosion came quickly, and went away even faster. After just a few seconds, the surroundings became calm again. Only the T-90 tank with its hatch, blown out, was left, burning alone in the open space. The concrete structure building on the left of the tank had its glass windows shattered by the impact of the explosion. The wooden structure hut on the right had its roof smashed by the flying tank fragments. Fortunately, everyone stood at a safe distance and had explosion-proof clothing and concrete trenches for protection. Otherwise, the high explosive shock wave generated by the explosion alone could shatter the entire internal organs of the human body, not to mention the explosion fragments and high heat flames. Are you all okay? After appreciating the artistic shock brought by the explosion, Mawei did not forget to show some concern for everyone. He didn't want any of his unlucky friends to be cut by the flying iron pieces. Otherwise, the medical staff on standby outside the scene would be very busy. Is anyone okay? Blizzard President Mike took the initiative to come out to check the safety of employees for Mawei. But as soon as he finished speaking, he leaned against the concrete wall because his legs were weak and his limbs were powerless. Mawei shook his head and took off his explosion-proof suit. He appreciated Mike's kindness. The explosion scene was very exciting, and the recording of the explosion-proof photography team was also very successful. Especially after the explosion. Not long after, the photography team took the camera and took close-up shots of the burning tank. Thick black smoke continued to emerge from the interior of the tank, with a pungent and unpleasant smell of burning. The flames burned for a long time before gradually subsided. The black and broken steel left behind was still showing the power of the explosion to everyone. The entire hatch was blown to pieces, and the heavy armor seemed to be torn apart, facing upwards. After taking off their explosion-proof suits, the Blizzard employees were all like Mike, shaken by the explosion. Their hands and lips trembled. For a moment, I felt like the end of the world. It was so scary, a male colleague said in a trembling voice. Yes, it turns out that a real explosion is so scary. When I was hit by the shock wave just now, I almost lost my balance. Another R&D employee said with a lingering fear. Chapter 53, A Different CS. Today's experience is unforgettable for them, and they will remember their new boss, Mawei, for the rest of their lives. After cleaning up the explosion site, Mawei asked several of his bodyguards to wear bandit and police costumes and cosplay as characters from Counter-Strike. Then he asked them to take AK-47, sniper rifles and other weapons and shoot at wooden houses and concrete buildings to collect raw data of various firearms for different materials. The firing rate, trajectory, power, all of these will be recorded. Even the feedback, when an object is hit by a bullet, will be made more detailed. As a reborn, Maweli will not follow the old path of his previous life. Although Counter-Strike was popular all over the world in 2000, due to the setting of the game itself, LAN battles, this game did not make much money, mainly because there was no subsequent charging project and there were many pirated copies. So it was surpassed by PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds and Crossfire, which later borrowed its element. Considering the above situations, Maweli decided to modify the operating model of Counter-Strike. You have to use the server to play, and you have to add props mall, biochemical mode, level breaking mode and other innovations to capture the interest of players. These game operation methods do not need to be used all at once. Just add them when the game data shows a downward trend. This way, you can maintain the popularity to a large extent, and the income you earn will be higher than in the previous life. Mike, when you return to the United States tomorrow, make a pre-sale website for Counter-Strike. Try to launch it within a week. While the bodyguards were recording the video, Maweli turned his head and said to President Mike, "Pre-sale website? Chairman Maweli, what is that?" Mike asked in confusion. The concept of game pre-sale was very avant-garde in the parallel world in 2000. Almost no game dealers would think of collecting money before making games. So President Mike didn't react to what Maweli said. Counter-Strike is limited to pre-sale, and 200,000 pre-sale CDKs will be issued first. If players buy it, they can play the game before other players during the game beta, which is also a privilege. Maweli explained lightly. With his past life experience, he could easily make a name for himself in the gaming industry. Pre-sale CDK, play games first during the internal test. 7 Blizzard employees, including President Mike, showed thoughtful expressions after listening to Maweli's answer. Originally, everyone thought that Maweli was just a rich man from Russia. But what everyone didn't expect was that Maweli not only had excellent game creative ideas, but also did a refreshing job in operation. 3 days later, Maweli asked the video editor to edit the footage of his C4 bombing tanks and bandits exchanging fire with policemen, and embedded it in the promotional poster of the Counter-Strike game to increase expectations. Then he took advantage of the heat and posted the video on his VGuest video website to test the waters in the early stage. In the previous month, his various videos of bombing luxury cars and bombing airplanes were enthusiastically sought after by netizens. This made the number of fans of Maweli's VGuest account rise to about 150,000. To have such an effect was very impressive in 2000, when the internet was not yet developed. This also established Maweli's title as the #1 online anchor. His Mavey ID has also become a good self-media logo. In terms of publicity effect, it is more effective than traditional newspapers and TV appearances. After all, young people who play games almost all like to surf the internet. Good evening, netizens. I'm very happy to share the new video with you. Maweli still wore his spiral mask, and his 150,000 fans affectionately called him the Russian Mask Tycoon. As soon as the video was uploaded to the internet, it appeared on the homepage of VKE.com. Now the traffic of Maweli's video website is about 20,000 people per day. This has led many manufacturers who have seen the business opportunities to contact the video website and ask to place their advertisements on the web page. Therefore, the advertising fees collected alone are almost enough to operate the website. When the internet gradually develops, Maweli will also launch a paid membership system. Give those paying users video privileges. At that time, combined with his other industries, such as games, entertainment, etc., I believe that a giant company similar to the concept of Pan Entertainment will be created when Maweli's video appears on the homepage of the website. At the same time, his 150,000 fans also received a system prompt. The podcaster Mavey Follow has recently uploaded a video. Do you want to click to watch it now? As the system push was sent out, more than 8,000 of the 150,000 fans came. Wow. I finally waited for you. What video is this time? I'm looking forward to it. Teach you how to make a flame tank? The rich have already started to burn tanks? Sports cars can't satisfy you anymore. Many netizens left comments under the video enthusiastically before watching it. If Maweli hadn't planned to open the barrage function on the website yet, these 8,000 people would have filled his video with barrages. The number of netizens who came to browse the video continued to increase, and soon rose to 12,000. They opened the video with great anticipation, and then saw a military green T-90 tank parked far away from the camera, and there was no one around. Seeing this, some new netizens couldn't help but feel puzzled, thinking, where is the flame tank that was promised to be made? Why is there no one making it? However, just as the netizens were thinking this, they heard a loud bang. A terrifying explosion occurred in the tank instantly. At the same time, the tank shook violently, and the hood flew into the blue sky in an instant. The explosion process was so fast that netizens saw the T-90 tank burned by a raging fire and destroyed in an instant just in the blink of an eye. Almost all netizens who saw the video were shocked by the explosion scene. This devastating power made many netizens watch it back and forth several times. Only after they had enough of the visual addiction did they prepare to watch the rest of the content. The second half of the video is an interspersed clip of the exchange of fire between terrorists and counter-terrorists. It is quite well done, not only full of rhythm, but also makes people excited, with the visual sense of a blockbuster movie. Many netizens saw this, and praised Maweli in their hearts, saying that the video is getting more and more exciting. They actually hired so many professional characters to play cosplay. Look at the scenes of them holding machine guns and shooting and destroying, which are not only extremely realistic, but also eye-catching. Chapter 54 pre-sale is coming soon. Just as netizens were enjoying the video progress bar quickly reached the end. At this time, a promotional poster for the game Counter-Strike popped up. It said first-person shooting battle and true presentation of the battlefield and other related introductions. It was also accompanied by a very appropriate bandit police confrontation picture, which made people want to play it at first sight. When it comes to new media soft advertising, no one is more experienced than Maweli. After all, in the previous internet, advertising was simply omnipresent. Ads popped up when watching a video, popped up when downloading resources, and sometimes even when opening an app, you had to be forced to watch a 3-second ad. But it must be said that Maweli's promotional strategy was very effective. Soon many netizens left messages under the video, asking the host where to buy the game and why it could not be found online. Voiceover host, where can I buy the Counter-Strike you recommended? Why can't I search for it? The game should be being promoted. It hasn't come out yet. But the scene of the tank being blown up is really cool. I watched it 40 times. Maweli's C4 video has just been released for 2 hours, and there are more than 1,000 comments online, and more than 30,000 people have watched it. Compared with those American rich second generations who follow his video, the popularity is more than 100 times higher. Many people are almost jealous and envious. 2 days later, Blizzard President Mike called and told Maweli that the pre-sale website will be ready soon. Chairman Maweli, the pre-sale webpage of Counter-Strike is now in the final testing stage. It is expected to be officially opened at 8 o'clock the day after tomorrow. Okay, I know. Maweli lay lazily on the sofa. 200,000 game CDKs, each priced at $28. This pre-sale concept is reversed. The game hasn't been made yet, and it can make a net profit of $5.6 million. Not to mention, when the game is online, the circle of money will be even more. And Maweli doesn't have to worry about not being able to sell it. You have to know that the popularity of Counter-Strike was very exaggerated. The sales volume was more than 3 million copies. At that time, almost anyone who went to an internet cafe could see a large number of people playing CS. The reason is not only that the game is fun, but also because there were not many games in 2000. There were not many fun ones. Chairman Maweli, wouldn't 200,000 CDKs be a bit too much? President Mike is not a reborn, and Blizzard has not developed smoothly in the past 2 years. So he is not very confident. If we release it according to this number, it may not be enough, Maweli said, while holding a satellite phone. He is really promising in this life, and the things he plays are all high-end. Compared with the envy of the life of the rich second generation in China in the previous life, Mawei now makes the rich second generation envious. Mike received the instructions and executed them according to the established policy. The pre-sale website was also launched on the same day, and many videos and introductions about the Counter-Strike game were put on the Blizzard official website for players to browse. However, it is not available for pre-sale yet, and it will have to wait until 8 o'clock the day after tomorrow. As soon as the pre-sale website of Counter-Strike was launched, the first people to know the news were not the players. Instead, they were the news media that made a living from the game industry and the major game companies that were in competition with Blizzard. Of course, it also included Blizzard's old boss, Vivendi. After Blizzard was acquired by Maverick, it has been paying attention to the company's dynamics. This is a habit of speculators. Just like men and women always pay attention to each other's lives silently after breaking up. In the office of the chairman of Vivendi, President Adrian was wearing an exquisite black suit, holding a cup of coffee just brewed by his secretary, and then leisurely looked at the information of various companies collected by the secretary. Adrian was born a speculator and likes to get involved in every industry. Relying on the money in his hands, he acquired those companies that had potential and had just emerged. Then he kept exploiting and squeezing until their potential was exhausted. Therefore, Adrian, who was over 50 years old, had a sarcastic face, and his whole temperament gave people the feeling that he was very refined and could not bear any loss. When Adrian was drinking coffee, he was watching the information in his hand. Suddenly, a line of text caught his eye. It was about the Blizzard company that was sold a few weeks ago, which recently released a new game on pre-sale, 200,000 copies of Counter-Strike CDK, each priced at $28. The total amount is as high as 5.6 million. That is half of the price they transferred Blizzard at the beginning. After seeing this information, President Adrian immediately put down the coffee in his hand. Then he said to the French secretary standing in front of him, "Go, call Leon to my office." As a narcissistic speculator, Adrian couldn't stand that the company he had underestimated had turned into a golden goose in the hands of others in less than a month. Out of narcissism and self-esteem, he didn't want to see the company he sold being revitalized by others. He even thought for a moment that Blizzard had the idea of this shooting game a long time ago and deliberately concealed it from the headquarters, just waiting for it to shine in the hands of the new owner after the transfer. 5 minutes later, when Vice President Leon received the news, he came to the office without knowing it. Adrian threw the information in his hand onto the desk with an expressionless face. "Let's take a look. What's going on at Blizzard?" Confused, Leon couldn't help but pick up the document, and then he knew why the president called him. Well, Chairman, I went to Blizzard for a field visit. The two games they are developing are not called Counter-Strike. There is no first-person perspective shooting game. Leon revealed everything he knew. He was caught off guard by what Mawei did. He didn't expect that Blizzard would make such a reversal in such a short time. "Do you think our decision to sell Blizzard was wrong?" President Adrian rubbed his temple. If Blizzard turned around in the hands of others, it would definitely be a slap in the face of the old boss. In other words, it would be a slap in the face of Adrian. I think it should be correct. After all, Blizzard's data and performance have been declining every day in the past 2 years. Game creativity and R&D capabilities are not as good as before. This is the unanimous assessment of our board of directors. Leon thought for a while, and then continued to say to Adrian, "Now they have come up with a pre-sale game, which may be just their last struggle. Besides, who would spend money to buy a game of unknown quality? Don't you think so, Chairman?" When facing new things, there are always people who praise them, and those who criticize them. From the perspective of Vivendi's senior executives, they are the ones who least want Blizzard to rise. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55. Counter-Strike becomes popular. When faced with new things, there are always people who praise them, and those who criticize them. From the perspective of Vivendi's senior executives, they least want Blizzard to rise. Because once that happens, they will be ridiculed by the outside world. They will laugh at their short-sightedness and lack of investment vision. After hearing this, President Adrian sat in his seat without saying a word. He always felt that he had a bad premonition in his heart, but he just couldn't put it into words. However, what neither of them noticed was that when the pre-sale news of Counter-Strike was released on Blizzard's website, the search engine of Google in the United States also displayed the information to users at the same time. This display is directional, and any user who has searched for the game will see it. This has increased the exposure of the pre-sale. Including the Amazon shopping platform, the pre-sale products of Counter-Strike have also popped up, and users can pre-order CDK directly through Amazon, which has increased some traffic. There is also his VGuest video website, and the daily traffic and existing user base are not covered. Even Maweli paid an advertising fee to rent the front page of many game information websites. No one knows the operation methods of the internet better than Maweli. The multi-pronged approach to traffic diversion made Counter-Strike sell 20,000 copies in just 4 hours on the night of pre-sale. That's $560,000 In the blink of an eye, the money earned from the T-90 tanks and C-4 bombs was earned back. The key is that the number of 20,000 copies is still rising. At about 6 o'clock the next morning, it broke the 30,000 mark. The results are so good that even peers in the media can't understand it. At 9 o'clock in the morning, in the conference room of Vivendi headquarters in France, President Adrian looked at the screen on the projector without saying a word. It shows the sales figures of Blizzard's Counter-Strike pre-sale website. For every CD case sold, the website's 200,000 inventory will be reduced by 1. It has now been reduced to 158,000 copies, which means that from 8 o'clock last night to 9 o'clock this morning, in just 13 hours, Maweli's Blizzard has sold 42,000 CDKs, with a total amount of $1.176 million. On both sides of the conference table sat Vivendi's shareholders and executives. Like President Adrian, they stared at the decreasing figures without saying a word. After about a minute, Adrian reached out and rubbed his swollen temple, then asked the executives, "Tell me, what's going on?" The Vivendi executives looked at each other in bewilderment. No one knew why Blizzard, which was originally considered a bad company, had become a hot commodity in less than a month. At this rate of popularity, 200,000 copies of CDK worth $5.6 million could be sold out within a month. This was half of the price they had paid for Blizzard. The key point was that this was still a pre-sale, which was simply a free-for-all. Even more ruthless than Vivendi. Seeing that the audience was silent and no one answered, Adrian turned to look at Vice President Lian. He clearly remembered that yesterday, Lian had said in front of him, no player will spend money first to buy a game of uncertain quality. So Adrian frowned and asked Lian, "Tell me, what is going on? How did you inspect Blizzard at the beginning?" Lian, who was sitting on pins and needles, had cold sweat on his back. He didn't expect that things would turn out like this. Originally, the board of directors praised him for selling Blizzard. But in the blink of an eye, all the guns were pointed at him. What is this? This? Chairman, I didn't expect it either. Maybe that guy named Maweli just happened to have this game. When Lian spoke, his mind was full of the scene when he met Maweli at the beginning. It must be said that this white Russian youth is really resourceful. The company that was obviously declining and exhausted was revived by him in an instant. It was simply a hat trick. The company has been transferred and the legal process is going through. Now it is too late for Vivendi of France to regret it. They could only watch helplessly as Maweli's Blizzard made a fortune before the game was even released. Moreover, they miscalculated the popularity of Counter-Strike. Selling 200,000 CDKs was a piece of cake for it. They were all sold out in less than 2 weeks. Many players who were delayed in getting the news and failed to grab the CDK left messages on the Blizzard forum, strongly demanding more copies. Damn it. I finally convinced my parents to lend me a credit card to buy CDK. I didn't expect it to be sold out so quickly. My 2 friends are bragging to me that they got it, but I don't. I strongly request that you sell more, as the players' enthusiasm was really high. Mike, The president of Blizzard saw the comment in the message area and called Maweli very happily. "Hello, Chairman Maweli. This is Mike. The 200,000 CDKs of Counter-Strike have all been sold. Now the company's customer service department has reported that many netizens have asked us to issue more. What do you think about this matter?" Maweli, who received the call, had already arrived at the Washington airport on a special plane. Another 300,000 copies will be issued. After they are sold out this time, they will not be issued again. Let's talk about it after the game is launched. Maweli is well versed in the essence of hunger marketing. Just like when a certain fruit mobile phone was sold in China, there was obviously a lot of inventory, but it was sold in limited quantities. The purpose was to whet the appetite of users. But the key is that the concept of the game Counter-Strike is good, coupled with powerful publicity and shocking videos, which immediately caught the attention of players. Okay, 300,000 copies. I'll ask the technical department to arrange it right away. President Mike really admired Maweli's methods. Not only him, but also 70 employees of Blizzard now have a very good impression of the new boss. It's no exaggeration to say that Maweli led Blizzard out of adversity entirely by his own strength. This alone is more than 1,000 times better than his old employer Vivendi. Therefore, any strategy proposed by Maweli now, Mike and others will almost unconditionally implement it without any worries. After talking to the president of Blizzard on the phone, Maweli took his Hummer team and left the airport. At this time, a text message from Jennifer came on his mobile phone. "Have you got off the plane? I'll wait for you at the Marriott Hotel." Maweli saw the message and almost thought of something wrong. "Then I'll come to pick you up." "Well, okay, see you then." Jennifer asked Maweli to meet at the Marriott Hotel because she was having afternoon tea with her bestie. Maweli put his mobile phone aside. "This stupid mobile phone is not as good as a smartphone. There is no camera function and no internet entertainment. If the time is not right, Maweli really wants to invest in Google immediately to develop smartphones and Android systems." Chapter 56 Google and Android. But when it comes to the Android system, if Maweli really wants to do it, he must not follow the old path of his previous life. An Android system and an iOS system are the two major veins of smartphones. In terms of profitability, they are very different. The reason why it is like this is that the original Android system was developed by Google in conjunction with dozens of companies. The programming language used is Java, which is far less efficient and fast than Apple's Objective-C. This directly leads to the Android system not only being inferior to Apple in terms of service and performance. Moreover, even the management, maintenance, and charging links are more chaotic than Apple. After such a cycle, it will naturally be clear which is better. Combining the lessons learned from the previous life, Maweli must wait until he makes enough money to smash Android. The performance must be comparable to us, and the charging is the same. 30% commission. So cool. The plan is brewing in Maweli's mind. An hour later, when the Hummer convoy arrived at the Marriott Hotel in downtown Washington, Maweli saw the beautiful Jennifer, who was coming out with her bestie. Jennifer had obviously dressed up carefully today. She was wearing a pure white pleated dress of a certain brand, which just showed off her well-proportioned and slender white legs. Her waist was perfectly decorated by the white dress. Her large breasts were also wrapped in the dress and bra, which made her look full and upright. With her delicate and elegant face, she looked like a goddess from a comic book. The male tourists in the hotel turned their heads to look at her. Jennifer and her girlfriends walked out of the hotel and saw Maweli leaning against the Lotus Elise. The silver Lotus Elise sports car had a gorgeous appearance that caught people's attention. Not only did the male guests in the hotel pay attention to it, but even the foreign women passing by were attracted by the handsomeness of the sports car. "Hi." Maweli, as a man, waved first and greeted Jennifer. Jennifer, who hadn't seen him for a long time, obviously had many feelings in her heart and didn't recognize Maweli immediately. Instead, she bit her lip slightly, with a hint of resentment in her eyes, and looked at Maweli with a hint of joy in her resentment. "Jennifer, that handsome guy is saying hello to you. He seems to be interested in you?" The best friends walking beside Jennifer were not the two that Maweli met last time. So the two of them didn't know about the relationship between Maweli and Jennifer. After hearing this, Jennifer bit her lips a little harder and then said angrily, if it's really interesting, that would be great. The resentment of not seeing each other for more than a month made the daughter of Marriott Group really hate him. After all, there are so many sweeties around her, but Maweli is like nothing happened, not nervous at all. During this period, she also wanted to give up, just ignore Maweli and don't reply to his messages. But not long after, she regretted it. Every time she saw Maweli's message, Jennifer would feel happy and a little satisfied. This experience is something she has never had before. It is also something that others cannot give. Ah. So you know each other? A girlfriend who can become a rich girl's best friend is naturally not stupid. From Jennifer's reaction, it is obvious that she has a special feeling for this handsome guy who drove a Lotus Elise sports car. It is very likely that there is something going on between the two. Jennifer, let's go first. By the girlfriend who saw the clue said hello and left quickly. They didn't want to be a light bulb. Well, bye. Jennifer watched her girlfriend leave. Then, she came to Maweli with her bag on her back, and her hands on her chest. The resentment in her eyes became heavier. If you don't know, you might think she met a heartless man. Maweli saw Jennifer, and hugged his arms without saying a word. So he shrugged his shoulders and simply hugged his arms. It seemed that he was quite comfortable like this. Jennifer blinked and looked at Maweli, knowing that the other party was deliberately imitating her. Why are you imitating me? Did I imitate you? Maweli asked deliberately. After more than a month of text chats, he and Jennifer have become much closer. Including when they are texting, they often quarrel and provoke each other. In short, it is flirting. Well, you are imitating me. You are doing it on purpose. What about the meeting last week? Jennifer said, raising her chin, trying to ask Maweli why he broke the appointment last week in a condescending manner. But just as she did this, condescending halfway, Maweli stood up straight and directly killed her little thoughts. Last week, the company had something to do and was hacked, so I couldn't come. Maweli was telling the truth. Last week, Blizzard's website almost collapsed because of too many players visiting it, plus hacker attacks. Fortunately, it was handled in time, and no losses occurred. Hacker attacks may be a conspiracy by jealous competitors. As the saying goes, people who are famous are prone to gossip, and Maweli knows what this sentence means. Hacker attack. Is it serious? Did you suffer any losses? Jennifer asked Maweli with concern. She knows the priorities, and when to be funny, and when to be serious. Fortunately, it was handled in time, and there was no loss, but people are evil. Maweli shrugged helplessly. Don't let him find out which grandson did it, otherwise they will definitely be in trouble. Oh, that's good. After learning the whole story, Jennifer was no longer angry at Maweli for breaking the appointment. Get in the car, let's go to the opera. Maweli opened the door of the sports car and let Jennifer get in. The opera he mentioned was suggested by Jennifer. The opera they watched was Carmen, one of the top 10 operas in the world. Maweli is actually not interested in this kind of performing art on the Western stage. It's just that he has never seen it live, so he wants to experience it. There is a big difference between opera and musical. Opera belongs to musical art, beauty first, theme second. Musical belongs to dramatic art, theme first, beauty second. Including the structure of the opera house, there are also big differences. Rich audiences can buy independent private rooms on the second and third floors and enjoy the exclusive privilege of being undisturbed. Maweli and Jennifer were sitting in the private room on the third floor. Their position was very good. Not only could they enjoy the stage perfectly, but it was also a private space, so no one would notice what they were doing. If they wanted to be even more extreme, there were curtains on both sides of the room that could be easily drawn to prevent people from peeping in. It was a good way to protect their privacy. Chapter 57, Manchuhan Banquet. Jennifer sat on the left side of Maweli. Her pure white pleated dress, due to the curved seat, revealed a little more of her beautiful legs. Even if Maweli didn't look, he could still see those bright white legs in his peripheral vision, which made people want to reach out and touch them. Jennifer sprayed a nice perfume today, so that even if Maweli looked forward, he could smell the faint floral scent emanating from her. Maweli, have you seen Carmen before? Jennifer asked Maweli with curiosity before the opera started. No. Mawei told the truth. There is nothing to be ashamed of. After all, Russians like to drink and fight. Okay, then I won't spoil it, if you behave well. Jennifer said, showing a beautiful smile. Women like to say such double entendres and flirt with each other. After hearing this, Mawei couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and then asked Jennifer, what if I don't behave? I knew you would ask this question. No creativity. Since the two often quarreled in text messages, Jennifer was used to Mawei's speaking style, so she expected him to ask this question. Mawei raised his eyebrows again after hearing this, but he didn't expect the little girl's counter-attack to become more and more sharp. No creativity? Then what about this? After watching the opera Carmen, Mawei drove his Lotus Elise sports car and took Jennifer to the Washington airport. The reason they had to go to the airport was that Mawei had booked a very high-end restaurant a few weeks ago. It was far away from Washington and needed to take a private plane to eat. Speaking of this high-end restaurant, it has a very interesting background. Its name is Tingliguan Restaurant, which is a Chinese time-honored palace-style restaurant with considerable historical value and a national-level special restaurant. It is located in the world-famous Royal Palace Summer Palace. That's right, it's the Summer Palace in Beijing. Mawei wants to take the goddess to taste the most authentic and luxurious palace banquet in China, the Manhan Banquet. Chapter 58 Russian Foreign Guests. The life of a world-class rich man is so willful. If you want to eat Chinese food, just fly over and eat it. You are too lazy to find those Chinese restaurants in the United States that don't taste good. To be honest, Mawei has also eaten Chinese food in the United States. The taste is really not as good as the roadside stalls he ate in his previous life. Mawei, why did you suddenly think of going to China just to have a meal? Jennifer asked Mawei curiously on the plane. She didn't know what the authentic Manchu-Han banquet was like. If she knew, she would never ask this question. Mawei looked at the Gulfstream G200 aircraft, which slowly took off from the airport. Then he only said 2 words to Jennifer, it's sentiment. Jennifer couldn't help rolling her eyes after hearing this, and gave Mawei a disdainful back of the head. It means to express that you, a Russian man, have no sentiment to eat in China. Could it be that you are a Chinese-Russian hybrid? But it doesn't look like that at all. Mawei shook his head to himself. He really hadn't eaten authentic Chinese food for a long time. Imagining the familiar taste in his memory, noodles with soybean paste, sweet and sour pork, roast duck in Beijing, steamed dumplings. Mawei immediately thought of many precious memories of his previous life. Of course, the Chinese food that Mawei had eaten before could not compare with the Emperor's Palace banquet. The Manchu-Han banquet has 108 dishes, 54 southern dishes and 54 northern dishes, all of which are delicacies from the mountains and the sea, and it takes 3 days to finish them. Deer nose, fish bones, sturgeon roe, monkey head mushroom, bear paw, toad, deer tendon, deer penis, leopard fetus. Most of the animals that the emperor ate at that time are now first and second class protected animals in the country, and he only tasted 1 bite of each dish. This level of luxury can be called a waste of natural resources. The seats in Tingley Pavilion can only be booked through connections. Even if ordinary people have money, they will not buy it. Because the guests usually received are mostly national leaders and important foreign guests. It takes about 14 hours to fly directly from Washington to Beijing. Mawei and Jennifer took a nap in their seats. When they woke up, it was already 8 AM in Beijing time. Mawei stretched in his seat, while Jennifer was covered with a blanket and still sleeping. Mawei turned his head and looked out the window and found that the plane was already flying over Beijing city. Looking at this former homeland, Mawei, who has become a little white-skinned Russian, to be honest, has a complicated heart. The Gulfstream G200 private jet soon landed at Beijing airport, and the beautiful Jennifer also woke up from her seat. The motorcade was arranged outside the civil terminal. The two needed to take their bodyguards and walk through the airport corridor to meet up with the local bodyguards who came to pick them up. Along the way, many Chinese people looked at Mawei and Jennifer, the fairy couple, with curious eyes. For Chinese people, the two are authentic foreigners. So this is also the reason why Mawei is reluctant to return to China. It is because this feeling is too strange. But then again, in 2000, there were still very few foreigners visiting China. Especially Russian tycoons like Mavey were definitely the favorites of many people. They all wanted him to invest in various ways in China, boost GDP, and meet targets. Everyone knows this. Mavey, what is that red square knot? Jennifer pulled Mavey and asked him what it was hanging on the souvenir shop. It was her first time in China, and many things seemed new to her. That's a Chinese knot, a handmade craft. Mavey introduced it to Jennifer casually. This made Jennifer feel that he was very knowledgeable and even knew this. Wow, you know so much. She trusted Mavey very much. She came to countries she had never been to, and she was not afraid that Mavey would sell her out. Mavey smiled after hearing this, and there was obviously a hint of complexity in her smile. Beijing in 2000 was still under development and construction as a whole. Many buildings under construction can be seen everywhere in the city. At this time, there was not much concept of luxury goods and luxury cars in China. Many people think that Mercedes-Benz and BMW are very good cars. Only the rich can afford them. As for the car that picked up Mavey and his partner, it was neither Mercedes-Benz nor BMW. It was the pride of domestic car brands, the extended red flag CA7460 luxury car. 4.6 liter, V-type 8-cylinder 462 engine, with a maximum power of 198 kilowatts. Known as the Chinese version of Rolls-Royce, it is only affordable for the most prestigious people in China. The red flag CA7460 was parked outside the airport terminal, with a small 5-star red flag on the front of the car. The license plate on the front of the car is the consulate license plate, and the traffic police rarely stop it on the road. There are 4 pure black tiger head Mercedes-Benz at the front and back ends. Next to each Mercedes-Benz, there are 2 bodyguards in suits and leather shoes. Looking at this formation, passers-by can tell at a glance that they must be waiting for a VIP. Fuck, this is the Hanki flagship series. It's incredible, and it comes standard with 4 Mercedes-Benz cars. I'm afraid that the 4 great young masters in Beijing can't catch up with this pomp. A Beijing gentleman who came out of the airport said to his female companion in a knowledgeable manner. The female companion was wearing very bright lipstick and her hair was permed like a poodle. She turned her head to look at the Hanki convoy that the man mentioned, and then, like everyone else around her, she chose to stop and watch, to see the excitement and to know who the convoy was picking up. Whether in 2019 or 2000, watching the excitement has always been a phenomenon in China. Especially in 2000, the pace of life was slower, there were no smartphones, and no wireless Wi-Fi. So joining in the fun has also become a great pleasure in people's lives. So when Mavey and Jennifer walked out of the terminal, the two saw a circle of melon-eating people outside the Hanki convoy. They were all pointing at the convoy, talking about how noble the Hutao Benz and the big red flag were, and that even the leaders of their own units didn't dare to buy them. Seeing this situation, Jennifer looked at the passers-by in a daze, thinking that the convoy had run into trouble. She didn't know what the passers-by were saying, because they were all speaking Chinese, which she couldn't understand. Mavey, who was walking beside her, was very clear about the situation. It was just that everyone was idle, and gathered together to chat, and watch the fun. Only the front row was missing to eat melon seeds. Master, do you want them to disperse? Seeing that the crowd blocked the road, the personal bodyguard asked Mavey carefully. No, just go through normally. No one present, whether it was the Russian bodyguard or the American bodyguard. No one understood the national conditions better than Mavey, and he didn't want to rely on his large numbers to bully his compatriots. That would be too disgusting, and it didn't fit Mavey's low-key and introverted original intention. Chapter 59. Talking about business. Just as he said, when Mavey and Jennifer, escorted by bodyguards, walked towards the red flag convoy, the crowd who were originally watching the scene seemed to sense something, and automatically made way for Mavey. Oh, I thought. Why is there such a big show? It turns out to be a reception for foreign guests. Wow, these foreigners are really impressive. They look like important people from abroad. A 50-year-old uncle said loudly, as if he saw something. After hearing this, the people standing around him suddenly felt that what he said made sense, so they all agreed and continued to discuss the topic of foreign guests. Soon the discussion went from north to south, and Mavey, who was about to get on the car, felt a little helpless, but also a little interesting. Hey, who would have thought that one day I would become a foreign guest? But this is better than being a foreign devil. Mavey could only think like this, secretly thinking in a happy mood. But he did not complain about his identity as a foreigner, because instead of being an ordinary person in China, it is better to be reborn as a Russian foreign guest and enjoy different treatment for foreign guests. As the door of the red flag was closed by the bodyguard outside, 4 Mercedes-Benz cars guarded Mavey's car in front and behind, and drove towards the summer palace. The long-lost 5-star red flag fluttered on the front of the car. In the city, bicycles, buses, and various buildings under construction can be seen everywhere, and Mavey paid close attention to them. This long-lost sense of familiarity made him feel very complicated, especially in the year 2000. He remembered that he was still in elementary school in his previous life. Unexpectedly, things are impermanent, things are different, and now he has become a foreign guest from Russia. Thinking about it carefully, it is really a bit sad. Which beauty are you looking at? Are you so devoted to it? At this time, Jennifer quietly leaned over her face, curious about what Mavey was looking at. Mavey's thoughts were pulled back to reality. He smiled and shook his head. I didn't see anything. By the way, can you ride a bicycle? Bicycle, I can ride it, but it's the kind with 4 wheels. Jennifer was afraid that Mavey would laugh at her, so she said she could ride a 4-wheeled bicycle. That is, the kind of children's bicycle with safety wheels. After hearing this, Mavey understood instantly, and he smiled unconsciously. Jennifer thought he was laughing at her, so she wanted to hit him angrily. But Mavey pressed her backhand on the leather seat, and was directly knocked against the wall. There is no need to say more about what happened afterwards. The 2 people in the back seat of the car hugged and kissed each other naturally. The driver and the butler who were responsible for driving the car looked straight ahead, as if they saw nothing. After all, they knew the rules. Some things would be unlucky if they saw them. An hour later, Ivan, the butler sitting in the front seat, received a call and answered it. Halfway through the call, the butler reached out to cover the microphone, turned to Mavey and asked, Master, Mr. Ma called, and said that they are almost at the north gate of the summer palace, and asked us how long it will take to get there. How should I answer? Mavey came to the summer palace for dinner this time, firstly to taste the most luxurious Chinese food. Secondly, of course, he wanted to talk about business. At this time in 2000, Tencent was less than 2 years old, and Alibaba was only 1 year old. This is simply the golden age of investment. If Mavey came to China and didn't take down these 2 companies, he would really be sorry for himself. Tell him that it will be soon, and we will be there soon, Mavey said to the butler after calming down. In this life, he is the Russian Mavey. When he sees Mr. Ma later, he must not be stupid or foolish. Okay, master. After the butler finished speaking, he released his hand covering the microphone, and then said to the man on the other end of the phone in English, we will be there soon, see you then, bye. After speaking, the butler hung up the phone, and the car became quiet again. At the same time, in the parking lot outside the north gate of the summer palace, a thin man, wearing a black, but obviously ill-fitting oversized suit, sat in his Alto car. The man was very thin, and at first glance, he could be described as skin and bones. From the face, he looked like the protagonist in Spielberg's movie, that is, Paul the Alien. That's right, the person Mavey met today was the founder of Alibaba Group, Ma Yun. At that time, Boss Ma was only 36 years old, and was far from being as powerful and influential as he later became, and he became the richest man in China. Sitting in the Alto car with Boss Ma was his business partner, Qiu Yangping, who was responsible for the operation of Alibaba, and had studied in the United States. Qiu Yangping was one of the 18 arhats who founded Alibaba with Boss Ma. Over the past year or so, they have tried everything possible to find people to invest in the company. However, since the internet started late in China, many conservatives still have reservations about such new things, with a hint of resistance. And Alibaba is not the first e-commerce company in China. There was also the 8848 business platform earlier than him. Therefore, not many people are willing to invest in Alibaba, which is owned by Ma, in the past year. Even if some people are optimistic about the e-commerce platform, they also invested in 8848. As for SoftBank, which was optimistic about Alibaba in the previous life, it seems that there is not much movement in this life. I don't know if it is because of the parallel world or the butterfly effect caused by the appearance of Ma Wei. Boss Ma, why did the investor from Russia ask us to meet in the Summer Palace? Could it be that the foreigner wants to go to the Summer Palace for a stroll after discussing business? Qiu Yangping couldn't help but joke with Boss Ma. He looks about 30 years old and has a gentle appearance. I don't know and don't guess randomly. It is said that the man is not small. He is a major shareholder of Amazon in the United States. Boss Ma couldn't help but preach to Qiu Yangping. Speaking of Amazon, it is a more mature and efficient internet company than Alibaba. In terms of seniority, Alibaba should also manage Amazon invested by Ma Wei and call him brother. It is precisely because of this relationship that when Boss Ma received the news of Ma Wei's investment interview, he was excited for many days. It is not an exaggeration to say that he tossed and turned in the hotel bed last night and did not sleep well. The appearance of Ma Wei can be said to be a great opportunity for Alibaba. If they seize it, they may be able to soar to the sky. Since Boss Ma started his business more than a year ago, not only are not many people willing to invest in Alibaba, moreover, there are almost no transactions in online orders. If this continues, and there is no improvement, I'm afraid that Alibaba in this life will be exhausted by this era before it can develop. Chapter 60. Rich Foreign Guests. I know about Amazon. I heard from an American friend that they got venture capital financing a while ago. The amount seems to be as high as $50 million US. It is because of this money that they are not affected by the internet bubble crisis. If our company can get such a large investment, then there will be no worries. Qiu Yangping still has some connections and understands some of the dynamics of his American counterparts. But he didn't know that the venture capital financing he was talking about was not someone else, but Ma Wei, who asked them to meet at the Summer Palace. However, just as the two were chatting like this, they saw two black tiger-headed Mercedes-Benz cars suddenly driving in at the entrance of the parking lot. Then, before the two of them could react, they saw that behind the tiger-headed Mercedes-Benz car, there was actually a red flag luxury car with a consulate license plate, CA7460. No. Rather than saying that they were following, it would be better to say that the two tiger-headed Mercedes-Benz cars were clearing the way for the red flag. Because Boss Ma and Qiu Yangping clearly saw that behind the red flag luxury car, there were two Mercedes-Benz cars of the same model and color. This luxurious Linoupe is simply a crushing existence compared to the small Alto that the two drove. Oh my god, a big red flag with 4 Mercedes-Benz, and the license plate is from the consulate. Mr. Ma, do you think the one in the car is it? Qiu Yangping asked Boss Ma with surprise. But who would have thought that Boss Ma, who has always been calm, was full of envy from his eyes to his toes after seeing Ma Wei's Linoupe. Or it could be said that he was stimulated by the fleet of luxury cars. After all, at this point in time, he had ideals and ambitions, but no actual development. The two of them just stood stupidly beside the Alto car, looking at the big Benz and the big red flag, which were parked not far away on the opposite side. Almost 2 minutes later, a large number of black-clad bodyguards suddenly got out of the 4 Mercedes-Benz luxury cars, and their number was comparable to that of an entire football team. The bodyguards walked to the front of the big red flag car in an orderly manner, and then the captain of the bodyguards respectfully stepped forward to open the car door. "Master, we have arrived at the Summer Palace." "Yes." Ma Wei, who was sitting in the red flag car, stretched lazily. The goddess Jennifer beside him seemed to be very interested in Chinese culture and kept looking at the bricks and tiles in the red walls outside the Summer Palace. The scenery inside is better. It's not too late to go in and see it. Although Ma Wei's identity is a Russian foreign guest now, he is very interested in Chinese culture like Jennifer. After all, it is the soul of his ancestors. What exactly is the Summer Palace? It looks very big from the outside. The restaurant we are going to is opened in the Summer Palace? Jennifer didn't know much about domestic history, so she didn't know the origin of the Summer Palace. The Summer Palace is a royal garden during the Qing dynasty of China. It was built by Emperor Qianlong and is now a key cultural relic protection site. Next door is the old Summer Palace, where many rare treasures, antiques, calligraphy, and paintings in the country used to be stored. But one day, the capital was invaded by the evil Eight-Nation Alliance, causing many cultural relics to spread abroad and now they can't be found. Mawei told the goddess everything he had learned from history textbooks. Both the Eight-Nation Alliance and the British and French forces burned the old Summer Palace. The first time was in 1860, when the British and French forces entered Beijing again after occupying Xianjin, and looted and burned the Royal Garden Old Summer Palace in the western suburbs of Beijing. The second time was in 1900, when the Eight-Nation Alliance captured Beijing. These stories made Jennifer, who was originally pure-minded, speak to Mawei in injustice after hearing the tragic experience of the old Summer Palace. This Eight-Nation Alliance is too abominable. Which 8 countries are they? So bad? Japan, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Hungary, the United States, and Russia. After Mawei finished speaking, he and Jennifer were silent. He just remembered that he was now a Russian. Facing the atrocities of the invasion, Mawei really took the blame. Ahem, it's getting late, we should get off the car. Mawei blushed and walked out of the car first. I wanted to show off in front of the white, rich and beautiful girl to show my erudition. However, because of negligence, I shot myself in the foot. Sure enough, pretending to be powerful will be struck by lightning. It seems that I should pretend less in the future. Just as Mawei walked out of the car like this, he himself did not realize that there was a man who was very familiar to him not far away, looking at him with fiery eyes. And the man tried to introduce himself to Mawei. But he was only halfway there when he was blocked by the black-clad bodyguards who were alert in advance. Sir, please don't come forward anymore, the local bodyguard said to the man in Chinese. He didn't know that the man in front of him would be the richest man in China in the future. When the bodyguard stopped Boss Mawei was reaching out to lead the goddess out of the honky car, so he didn't pay attention. But when he turned around and prepared to go to the main gate of the Summer Palace, he found that there was a very familiar figure wandering 5 meters away from his peripheral vision. Mawei turned his head and found that the person was none other than the founder of Alibaba, Ma Yun, Boss Ma, who was scheduled to meet at the Summer Palace today. That person, he is my friend. Mawei immediately asked the translator to tell the local bodyguard. It's not that he doesn't care about speaking Chinese, but that Russian Mawei has never learned Chinese. So it's too abnormal to say it out loud. The female translator nodded and said to the bodyguard in Chinese, that gentleman is a friend of our Mr. Mawei. He is fine. After the communication, the bodyguard bowed to Boss Ma apologetically and then let him and Qiu Yangping in. Boss Ma was very surprised and very grateful that Mawei could recognize him at a glance. So he stepped forward with a kind smile, shook hands with Mawei, and greeted him in English. Hello, Mr. Mawei, I'm from Alibaba. Our company is an e-commerce company like Amazon, which you invested in before. At present, there are not many people in our country doing this. Our Alibaba is the second largest e-commerce platform in China. Boss Ma was an English teacher, so he spoke English very fluently. Under financial pressure, he was eager to introduce his company to Mawei. Including the opening remarks he just said, he was not afraid of being laughed at. He practiced in front of the mirror for a long time. Mawei listened to the words patiently, but did not listen to the specific content. Because at this moment, all he could think about was that he was really successful in this life, and he actually appeared in front of the future richest man as an investor. This scene would definitely go down in history, even if Mawei didn't mention it. In the future, when Boss Ma is interviewed by the media, given his personality, he would definitely say, including all kinds of media, they would definitely ask about the original investment. Chapter 61. It's easy to get things done with someone in the court. When Boss Ma was introducing his company, Mawei suddenly wanted to interrupt him and said to him directly, okay, you've been talking for a while. Can't I give you money? Is 30 million enough? If not, then 50 million US dollars. These words would only appear in Mawei's mind. he would not be so stupid as to say them out loud. It was all because of Boss Ma's identity and image in his previous life, which was far better than his. But in this life, the gap in identity between the two people was completely reversed. Okay, Mr. Ma, nice to meet you. Regarding business matters, why don't we talk about it while eating? Ma Wei, who has lived to lives, became serious and professional. Okay, let me introduce you to Mr. Ma Wei. This is my partner, Qiu Yangping, who is the operations director of our Alibaba company. When Boss Ma was young, he spoke with a spirit and had much more hair than 10 years later. Well, hello. Ma Wei shook hands with Qiu Yangping casually. Then he put his arm around Jennifer's waist and led Boss Ma and Qiu Yangping into the summer palace. Along the way, the bodyguards cleared the way. Jennifer walked on Ma Wei's left, while Boss Ma and Qiu Yangping walked on the right. This, Mr. Ma Wei, have you been to the summer palace before? It was built by Emperor Qian Long of our country to honor Empress Xiaosheng, using 4.48 million taels of silver. In order to avoid awkward atmosphere, Boss Ma naturally took on the job of introducing. Ma Wei walked leisurely among the bodyguards. This was not his first time to the summer palace. He had visited it before, but this time, his mood was obviously very different from that of his previous life. There were various forms of halls, pavilions, corridors, and terraces everywhere in the park, and the scale was more than 3,000. And Tingley Pavilion was an important one among these 3,000 buildings. It was located on the southern foot of Wanshao Mountain, with a long corridor in front, facing the rippling Kunming Lake, and backed by Wanshao Mountain. It was surrounded by green bamboos and the scenery was pleasant. At that time, Empress Dowager Cixi liked to watch operas and listen to music here. By the way, Mr. Ma Wei, the restaurant you are dining at this time should be the Tingley Pavilion restaurant on the southern foot of Wanshao Mountain, right? The imperial court cuisine there is very good. Boss Ma said with his eyes wide open, and at the same time raised his thumbs, indicating to Ma Wei that it was very good there. The nourishing medicinal diet and imperial court longevity cuisine there are also well deserved and delicious. Operations Director Qiu Yangping also supplemented Ma Wei in English. However, the two may have been nervous, so they didn't realize that Ma Wei came all the way here this time to taste the legendary imperial court feast Manchu Han banquet. It was not the dishes they were talking about. After all, the Manchu Han banquet at Tingley Pavilion was not something that anyone could eat in 2000. 5 minutes later, when Boss Ma and Qiu Yangping followed Ma Wei and Jennifer to the Tingley Pavilion restaurant, in front of the quaint attic, there was a long row of women in pink and red palace dresses and wearing banners on their heads. It was as if an important person was going to visit the restaurant. Why are there so many receptionists at the door today? Qiu Yangping couldn't help but wonder. He remembered that, when he came to Tingley Pavilion last time, there were only 2 receptionists standing at the door, and they were not very pretty, far from being comparable to the ones now. However, just as he was wondering, the head of the group, a female manager in palace dress, who looked to be in her 40s and spoke not very standard English, stepped forward and asked, "Excuse me, are you from Russia, Mr. Ma Wei?" "Yes, we are." The female translator quickly took over the conversation, fearing that the female manager would speak English in front of the foreign guests and embarrass the Chinese people. Okay, welcome. Please come in." Seeing that the guests brought their own translators, the female manager breathed a sigh of relief and changed the English to Mandarin. This made Ma Wei feel comfortable. He really didn't want to speak English, but Russian. She kept talking about how uncomfortable she felt. The row of palace maids standing behind the female manager, each of them slender and pretty, smiled at Ma Wei. Obviously, they could tell who in the crowd was the main person to be welcomed this time. Seeing the female manager and the female receptionist's posture, Boss Ma and Qiu Yangping, who were accidentally ignored by them, deeply felt the indifference from their compatriots. But there was nothing they could do about it. In terms of their worth, background, and asset strength, they could only play supporting roles now. To put it bluntly, they were just following Ma Wei to get some benefits. "Mr. Ma Wei, this time you ordered, it couldn't be the Manchu and Han banquet of Tingliguan restaurant, right?" Boss Ma and Qiu Yangping also reacted. Judging from the welcoming attitude of the restaurant, Ma Wen's meal this time was probably the highest level of state guest courtesy of the restaurant. I guess so, Ma Wen said with a blink of his eyes, not wanting to show off in front of the two too much. Thanks to the fact that the family has many connections in Beijing, and the Russian embassy in China also has connections. So it was almost effortless to make an appointment for this meal, and it only cost a little money at most. Awesome. After hearing this, Boss Ma couldn't help but give a thumbs up again. If he remembered correctly, there was a rich man who wanted to spend 250,000 RMB to have a full banquet at Tingli Pavilion through his connections, but was rejected by the boss. The reason was that the rich man was full of stinking money and did not respect Chinese traditions. He thought that he could do whatever he wanted with a little money. In contrast, Ma Wei gave people the feeling of being calm and profound. Obviously, his net worth exceeded $100 million. Logically, such a person can walk sideways in China. But Ma Wei is still very friendly to others, even if they are just ordinary people. Boss Ma, you are flattered, Ma Wei said with a smile. Then he hugged Jennifer, and under the guidance of a group of palace maids, he came to an exquisite private room with elegant environment and full of ancient charm. On the way, his ostentatious team of palace maids made the guests dining in the lobby turn their heads. Anyone with a discerning eye could see why Tingpeng Pavilion was so grand. It must be to welcome the tall and handsome foreigner in the team. Mr. Ma, the imperial kitchen is ready. Do we start serving the dishes now? The female manager of Tingpeng Pavilion asked Ma Wei in Chinese. However, she herself did not notice that, although Ma Wei was his real Russian name, his surname was not Ma. Instead, it was Mikoyan. The only gentleman with the surname Ma was Ma Yun, the boss Ma, who had just sat down and had not had time to react. Fortunately, Ma Wei pretended not to understand according to his Russian identity, otherwise the atmosphere would be awkward. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, Money Makes Me Dizzy. Fortunately, Ma Wei pretended not to understand according to his Russian identity, otherwise the atmosphere would be awkward. Maybe the female manager would be deducted from her performance bonus because of this slip of the tongue. Ahem. Mr. Ma Wei, the restaurant manager asked you if we can serve the dishes now. It was not easy for the female translator present to fill in the gap of Mr. Ma. Yes, serve the dishes. Ma Wei's stomach was growling with hunger. He was kind-hearted and would not deliberately care about these small mistakes. After all, it is not easy for others to work, so let them be forgiven. With the departure of the female manager and a whole row of reception ladies, only Ma Wei, Jennifer, Boss Ma, Qiu Yangping, several black-clad bodyguards, and maids in charge of service were left in the elegant private room. After this contact, Boss Ma and Qiu Yangping were already a little unsure about how to respond. After all, at present, the two sides are not at the same level at all. Even the Manchu and Han banquet of Tingpeng Pavilion was taken advantage of. To sum it up with the netizens' words, I can brag about this for a year. Oh, no. It's 3 years. Seeing that the atmosphere in the room gradually quieted down, Ma Wei casually asked the two. Boss Ma, how is your company's current revenue in the past year? What is the website traffic and average daily transaction volume? Ma Wei's casual question was difficult for Boss Ma and Qiu Yangping to answer. Because if you want to tell the truth, Alibaba's transaction volume in the past year is almost zero. They only persuaded merchants to spend money to register shops on their website. However, buyers do not approve of this kind of B2B transaction on the internet. They prefer offline transactions, where money is exchanged and goods are delivered. The B2B operating model refers to a model of transactions between enterprises and between merchants through the internet. It is very different from Taobao and Mall's B2C and C2C. Many corporate buyers prefer traditional transaction models. Well, Mr. Ma Wei, because the domestic internet has just started, it has not been widely recognized yet. So to be honest, Alibaba has less than 10 orders this year. Only those merchants are still supporting us as always. Boss Ma said to Mawei very frankly. He is a businessman, but he is not the kind of unscrupulous businessman who is profit-seeking and cunning. I remember that in the first 3 months, because Alibaba really had no buyers willing to trade, merchants also complained frequently about this. Then Boss Ma decided to return the store rental fees paid by the merchants to them, without missing a cent. This frank move made the merchants feel that he was trustworthy, so they came to support and comfort him, saying that the money could be returned without rushing, and it would be okay to wait a little longer. I have to say that people in 2000 were very cute and very simple. If it were 2019, there would be nothing to say. Companies that dare to return money are fools. Users who don't take money and support them are also fools. Shared bicycles are a good example. A certain author was bewitched at the beginning and recharged 100 yuan, but the money has not been returned yet. Mawei listened to the words patiently. According to his memory from his previous life, Alibaba was indeed very difficult when it first started. But he didn't expect it to be so difficult. Less than 10 orders a year. He repeated this sentence subconsciously. However, the speaker was unintentional, but the listener was intentional. Boss Ma and Qiu Yangping, who were sitting in front of him, looked at each other with embarrassment. From their eyes, it can be seen that the two knew that Alibaba and Amazon, which Mawei invested in, are currently very different. Whether it is the internet environment, the development of e-commerce platforms, or the audience, Amazon is much more mature. Boss Ma saw Mawei's thoughtful expression and was worried that this negotiation would be in vain like the previous ones. So he quickly added, "This, Mr. Mawei, it's like this. Our Alibaba company has just started. So, you don't need to invest a lot of money at the beginning. There are unlimited business opportunities in our Chinese market in the future. Maybe you can make a small investment to test the waters. I believe that within 2 years, our Alibaba." Boss Ma is a very eloquent person. He didn't expect Mawei to invest 30 or 50 million US dollars right away, like he did with Amazon. If Mawei was willing to invest 5 million, he would be very satisfied. However, just as he was nagging and trying to persuade Mawei to invest, Mawei took a sip of the Yang Chunlu brewed by the palace maid, and then said to Ma Yun lightly, "Boss Ma, you don't need to say more. Let's do this. I will invest 50 million in you." As soon as the resounding words fell, Boss Ma and Qiu Yangping, who were sitting in front of him, were stunned for a moment. They didn't even have time to close their mouths. 50 million US dollars? He was really not afraid of being laughed at. In this life, at this point in time, Boss Ma didn't even know what 5 million US dollars looked like. So when Mawei said 50 million US dollars, Boss Ma's hands under the tablecloth couldn't help but tremble. If he hadn't known in advance that Mawei had invested in Amazon, he would have thought Mawei was joking at this moment. Is this an investment? Or is it just buying groceries? 50 million, without blinking an eye, just, yes, US dollars. Mawei said frankly. According to his memory of his previous life, Japan SoftBank Group wanted to invest 40 million US dollars in Alibaba. But after considering it, Boss Ma only asked for 20 million. Because if the investment is too much, his shareholding in Alibaba will be reduced. So Boss Ma was excited, thought about it, and finally said to Mawei with a very sincere expression and tone, "Mr. Mawei, thank you very much for your support to me and Alibaba. Do you think this is okay? For an investment of 50 million US dollars, I think we only need 50%, which is 25 million US dollars. Everyone present was smart, and there was a reason for any decision. Mawei had expected the other party to say this. After all, Alibaba has just started, and no one can afford to spend 50 million US dollars at once. It is very different from the situation when investing in Amazon. Okay. Mawei nodded happily. The deals he went out to discuss were just for voting. He didn't need to discuss every detail. Anyway, the rest of the things could be left to his subordinates to discuss. For example, the shareholding ratio, the restrictions on the issuance of original shares and many other details did not need Mawei to discuss, as that would be too tiring. Chapter 63 Tencent. Tea instead of wine. I wish you a happy cooperation. Mawei took the lead in raising his teacup and said a very oriental witty remark in English. This made Boss Ma and Qiu Yangping, who were sitting in front of him, smile. I didn't expect Ma Wei to understand Chinese culture so well. Goddess Jennifer blinked curiously, looking at the three men in front of her, who were drinking tea so happily, just like drinking wine. I really don't understand where the fun is. However, as the daughter of Marriott Group, Jennifer is still very well behaved. She knows that, when a man is talking about business, she should give him face, and not cause trouble for him. She fully plays a role of a vase. So during the whole process just now, Jennifer did not play a petty temper or act willful. She did not look around bored or absent-minded. Instead, she pretended to listen with relish, nodded frequently, and smiled sweetly. Just like when she followed her father to talk about business before. After Ma Wei expressed her investment intention, Boss Ma and Qiu Yangping finally let go of their worries. The expression on his face was no longer so nervous and reserved. You can enjoy the various delicacies that will be served on the table later. The highest price of the Manchu Han banquet at Tingpeng Pavilion is 360,000 yuan. This price was enough in Beijing in 2000. If you paid a little more, you could buy a very nice house in the second ring road. But now it is just Ma Wei's meal. It can be seen that the degree of luxury is simply outrageous. Of course, this money is not wasted. There are 108 main dishes of the Manchu Han banquet, 30 Jiangsu and Zhejiang dishes, 12 Cantonese dishes, and 12 Fujian dishes, a total of 54 southern dishes, 30 Shandong dishes, 12 Manchu dishes, and 12 Beijing dishes, a total of 54 northern dishes. In addition to these 108 main dishes, there are 196 cold and hot dishes, and 124 dim sum and tea dishes. It is difficult to finish them in 3 days. According to this amount of food, it will take at least a week. When the dazzling array of dishes were brought out by the palace maids one by one, Ma Wei and others deeply felt the feeling of being an emperor. That is, one word cool. 2 words, very cool. Venison slices, dragon breast, roe deer spine, pheasant slices, lotus leaf porridge, phoenix tail steamed buns, braised fish lips in a pot. One after another of the exquisite dishes were beautifully presented, and Ma Wei's stomach was growling. Even Jennifer, a rich girl, had to be surprised after seeing such luxurious dishes. She was obviously amazed by the profound traditional Chinese cuisine. Chopsticks, can you use them? Ma Wei asked Jennifer with a smile. Foreigners are used to using knives, forks, and spoons, and chopsticks are really unfamiliar to them. After hearing this, Jennifer tried to pick up the chopsticks, but she couldn't use them well. But it didn't matter, because the maid next to her would feed her and Ma Wei personally. After all, if you spend so much money, the service must be top notch, just like the emperor used to eat, and never did it himself. Boss Ma and Qiu Yangping, who can use chopsticks, were speechless by the luxury and service of the Manchu and Han banquet. Ma Wei spent 360,000 yuan on this meal, and he could have bought them 5 Altos. Yes, that's right, the 2000 Alto SC7080. The manufacturer's suggested retail price is 71,000 yuan, which is much more expensive than expected. At that time, Santana 2000 sold for 200,000 yuan. Even Xyli sold for 78,000 yuan. The Manhan banquet lasted for 3 days, but Boss Ma and Qiu Yangping only had 1 meal. After lunch, they discussed the relevant matters of this investment with Ma Wei's investment team. Well, I'm so full, I feel like I'm going to gain weight. In the private room, Goddess Jennifer touched her belly, and her weight loss plan was ruined again. Women are really a magical animal. They are obviously not fat in the eyes of others, but they shout about losing weight every day. Ma Wei ignored Jennifer's coquettish complaints, as if he didn't hear them. He took a sip of Yang Chunlu, and then asked Jennifer, what time is the flight tonight? Because the family had an important gathering, Jennifer had to take her father's Gulfstream V-type business jet back to the United States in the evening. Tonight, I don't know yet, let's see what time the plane arrives. The goddess Yan'an whispered. She didn't want to separate from Ma Wei so soon, but she was entangled in trivial matters, and had no time to be alone. Well, then you can still have a meal. This is really going to make you fat, Ma Wei said to Jennifer in a lively atmosphere. The goddess, who was originally reluctant to leave him, was instantly broken up and glared at Mawei. Don't you think it's a pity? The time we were together was too short. It's a pity, right? But, haven't you heard an old Chinese saying? Mawei turned around and asked Jennifer. What are you talking about? Jennifer looked at Mawei seriously. If this guy didn't explain clearly, she would explode her little universe and fight with Mawei. If the love between two people lasts for a long time. Mawei deliberately said only half of the sentence. As for the second half of the sentence, why should we be together day and night? He just didn't say it. Because it was too corny to say it. What about the second half? Jennifer asked. What's the second half? Mawei looked at his nose and looked at his heart. He was absolutely first class at pretending to be stupid. The second half of your sentence just now. If the love between two people lasts for a long time, what's the rest? Jennifer was attracted by this ancient saying and wanted to know what the rest was. The rest? No, if you want to know, I'll tell you when I have a chance. Mawei smiled angrily and then welcomed the goddess's punches, and the sound of fighting instantly rang in the private room. The bodyguard standing outside the door heard that he really didn't know what the young master was doing. After sending the goddess away, at noon on the third day, in the private room of Tingpeng Pavilion, Mawei was alone enjoying the food. At this time, the butler Ivan bowed and walked into the room, and whispered to Mawei, Master, Tencent. They chose to cooperate with South African newspapers, and accepted their financing. So recently, there is no intention to raise funds. So, they politely declined our proposal. Now what do you think? What should we do? In the parallel world, coupled with the butterfly effect that appeared in Mawei, many things are very different from the previous life. Take Tencent for example. It was originally not until 2001 that it could obtain $32 million in financing from South African newspapers. But in this life, the time point was 1 year earlier. So they didn't care much about Mawei's invitation for financing. Because they had money in their pockets, they didn't need to share the cake with others in the form of selling shares. Since it's rejected, forget it. Prepare the car later. I'm going to the city center after dinner. Mawei didn't feel anything about Tencent's rejection. First, the investment negotiations with Alibaba were going quite smoothly. Second, even if Tencent refused, as a reborn person, he has plenty of ways to turn the situation around. Chapter 64, The Sahawan in Lianjing. Mawei didn't feel anything about Tencent's rejection. First, the investment negotiations with Alibaba were going quite smoothly. Second, even if Tencent refused, as a reborn person, he had plenty of ways to turn the situation around. That is, when he had more money in the future, he would buy the South African newspaper industry. Or when Google developed smartphones and the Android system, he would definitely create a chat software called WeChat to seize the Chinese mobile market. By then, I believe more and more people will choose WeChat. Then WeChat's market share can shake up penguin questions. Using this method is actually not what Mawei wants. So the whole plan is still just in the imagination, and it depends on whether Tencent will completely shut him out. Master, the fleet is ready. Do you want to leave now? After Mawei had lunch, the butler Ivan re-entered the private room. Well, let's go now. These 2 days, the Manchu-Han banquet was greasy, and Mawei felt that he should go out for a walk. The $50 million that was originally prepared to invest in Tencent is no longer needed, and Citibank still had $288 million lying around, with nowhere to spend it. So Mawei had no choice but to decide to buy a few buildings in the center of Beijing. Fortunately, at this time in 2000, there were no purchase restrictions, and foreigners only needed to go through some formalities to buy a house. Speaking of buying a house, with Mawei's current net worth, he would definitely buy a luxury building within the second ring road of Beijing. But at this point in 2000, the real estate industry had just started, and many well-known luxury houses and villa complexes had not yet been built. It is estimated that some developers have not even bought the land. So Mawei finally set his sights on those courtyard houses within the North Second Ring Road. That's right, those courtyard houses that were later expensive to 1 billion or 2 billion. The key is that there are a lot of courtyard houses in Beijing that are being snapped up by local tycoons. These traditional courtyard style buildings are ancient buildings that have been accumulated over a long period of time. They are a non-renewable resource and are extremely scarce. It is also a symbol of identity for the powerful in Beijing. All the dignitaries, celebrities, and politicians in the past have lived here. The historical value alone is immeasurable. Not to mention how valuable the land is in this city of Beijing, where every inch of land is worth a lot of money. Go ask if there are any good real estate agents to recommend. Ma Wei told the housekeeper. Sahayan are all antique old houses, and all the transaction information is with the real estate agents. There are almost no developers, and it is impossible for them to have any. The housekeeper Ivan didn't understand what his young master wanted to do. Why did he ask the real estate agent? In the past, they all bought first-hand houses. But Ma Wei is his young master after all, so it is not convenient for the housekeeper to ask more. He just follows the instructions. Okay, young master, I'll ask them now. Ivan and the female translator ran to ask the manager of Tingley Pavilion what good real estate agents to recommend. In fact, what the housekeeper didn't know was that if this Sahayan was bought and renovated, it would definitely be like living in a small palace. The key is that it is in the North 2nd Ring Road, and many people are jealous and envious. At the recommendation of the restaurant's female manager, Ma Wei drove his red flag luxury car with 4 Mercedes-Benz cars all the way to Dongcheng district in Beijing. In 2000, the internet was not yet popular, and the agency's address was difficult to find. The convoy circled around in the Dongcheng district of the North 2nd Ring Road for a while. Finally, they found the real estate agency recommended by the manager. It was in a commercial alley, a one-way street, and the car couldn't drive in. It had to go around a big bend. Just stop in front. Don't go around. I'll walk over. Ma Wei was not a hypocritical person. Besides, this one-way lane was originally narrow. If the convoy drove over, even if it stopped for a while, it would cause traffic jams and affect others. Okay, young master. The butler signaled the driver to pull over. Then he got out of the car and took the initiative to open the door for Ma Wei. The appearance of the red flag luxury car and the Mercedes-Benz made the pedestrians passing by the street turn their heads and pay attention. I wondered which rich man was so big, driving a luxury car and bringing bodyguards, like a modern version of a local emperor. Ma Wei wore sunglasses and got out of the hanky car in a very stylish manner. His handsome appearance gave people the feeling of shooting a pictorial or a movie, and he was even more lethal to women. You and the bodyguard, don't follow too closely for now. After finally coming to China, Ma Wei wanted to walk on the street alone and quietly feel the atmosphere. He didn't want the bodyguard to destroy this harmony. Okay, young master. The butler took the order and brought the burly bodyguards to keep a distance of about 10 meters from Ma Wei and the female translator. This scene suddenly became very interesting, because when Ma Wei stopped, the butler and bodyguards behind him also stopped at the same time. The passers-by who didn't know the situation kept looking back at these black-clad bodyguards. When Ma Wei walked, he came to the real estate agency not far away. Ma Wei took off his sunglasses and looked carefully at the rental and purchase information on the whiteboard. The female translator standing next to him stepped forward with a smile and explained to Ma Wei, "Mr. Ma Wei, what kind of house do you want to see? Maybe I can ask for you." Just as the female translator was saying this, a female salesperson in the real estate agency spotted Ma Wei through the glass. So she stepped on her leather shoes and greeted him with a smile on her face. "Hello. Are you here to see the house? I'm a salesperson here. My name is Xiaoji. Do you have a Sahayan for sale here?" Ma Wei asked the female translator to help him translate, although he really wanted to communicate in Chinese. "Sahayan? Sir, do you want to rent it? Or do you want to buy it?" "Sahayan, because it is an ancient house, the rental price or the purchase price will be much more expensive than other houses." Xiaoji is not very tall and a little fat, but her voice is sweet, and she has cute tiger teeth when she smiles. After listening to the translation, Ma Wei nodded casually and then asked the female translator to translate. "It doesn't matter if it's a little expensive. How many courtyard houses do you have here? If the area is large, I will take them all." The female translator had seen Ma Wei offer $50 million at a time, so she was a little prepared for his generosity. But when she translated the original words to Xiaoji word for word, Xiaoji, who had just been working in real estate sales for a few months, suddenly opened her eyes wide. She looked at Ma Wei with surprise. Sir. Then please wait for me. I will go in and help you get the information, Xiaoji said, and turned around and ran towards the real estate agency. She has only been in the industry for 3 months and has never received any big orders. Ma Wei came up and said that he wanted to buy all the courtyard houses they were selling. This is really awesome. Maybe it's a super big order. Chapter 65 Buying Like Cabbage. It was not until several minutes later that the salesperson Xiaoji ran back to Ma Wei with a pile of information. This time, she was accompanied by a middle-aged woman who looked to be in her 40s. The woman's surname was Li. She was the owner of a real estate agency and was also Xiaoji's aunt. Are you going to buy a courtyard house in Zhejiang? And you don't want a small one? Aunt Li, wearing a red cardigan and a white pearl necklace around her neck, asked Ma Wei after a careful look. After all, she had eaten a few decades more than her niece, and she had been working as a real estate agent for some years, so she was more cautious. Unlike Xiaoji, who believed it as soon as she heard it, Ma Wei naturally understood Aunt Li's concerns, but he didn't take it to heart. At this time, the female translator beside him relayed his words to Aunt Li and Xiaoji. My boss wants to ask you, how many Sahayans do you have for sale? If the area is less than 1000 square meters, my boss will not want it. As soon as these words came out, Aunt Li standing in front of her couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. You don't want Sahayans less than 1000 square meters? We have exactly 2 here, with an area of more than 1000 square meters. One is on the north bank of Zhehe, with an area of 3200 square meters. The other is in Nanluoguxiang, which is slightly smaller, at 1800 square meters. Aunt Li said, and asked Xiaoji to show Ma Wei the information and quotations of the two Sahayans. However, when the information was handed over, Ma Wei waved his hand and said, you don't need to look at the information and prices. I will buy these 2 Sahayans directly. After the translation, Aunt Li and Xiaoji standing in front of her suddenly looked stunned and messy in the wind. I thought I had heard it wrong. What? You didn't even look at the price and bought it directly? The total price of the 2 courtyard houses is more than 6 million. Is this buying a house or visiting a street stall? Besides, there is no such thing as visiting a street stall. Aunt Li looked at Ma Wei in amazement. She really wanted to know whether Ma Wei was joking or serious. But she soon knew the answer, because at this time, the housekeeper Ivan, who was standing at the corner, rushed over with bodyguards. He came to handle the formalities for the young master. Foreigners still have to go through some procedures to buy a house in Beijing. But fortunately, there were no purchase restrictions in 2000. Otherwise, Ma Wei couldn't buy more. Young master, the deposit of 250,000 yuan has been transferred through the bank. Ma Wei did not let the housekeeper pay 6 million yuan to the intermediary at one time. It's not that he was stingy and felt sorry for the money. But in 2000, most real estate intermediaries were self-employed. To put it bluntly, if someone absconds with the money, Ma Wei will be really upset. He will have to watch people cheat him out of his money. Mr. Ma Wei, please sign your name here. Aunt Li saw the 250,000 yuan deposit remitted by the bank, and now she completely believed in Ma Wei's financial strength. So she was more enthusiastic and thoughtful in her service. Ma Wei nodded and signed his name. The 2 5,000 square meters of courtyard houses he bought from a real estate agency are now priced at 6 million yuan. But in 10 or 18 years, if they are not included in the demolition list, the price will at least double to 1.2 billion or 1.5 billion. That is 200 times or 300 times. So Ma Wei doesn't need to negotiate the price at all, just buy it directly. So, for almost an afternoon, Ma Wei drove his honky luxury car to buy courtyard houses everywhere. It was like wrestling cabbages. He accepted everyone who came and took as many as he could. Like what? A 1030 square meter courtyard house on Guozijian Street, priced at 1.6 million RMB. One word buy. A 1300 square meter courtyard house at the west entrance of Dongxi 2nd Street, priced at 1.9 million RMB. One word buy. a 3,400 square meter courtyard house at Yahutong, north of Haohei, priced at 3.3 million RMB. One word: bye. This round of acquisitions made Mawei very tired. But he was happy and sad. And he also achieved a lot. Master, you have ordered a total of, 27 sets of Zijing courtyard houses. The total area is 43,500 square meters, and the price is 49.58 million RMB, which is equivalent to 6.197 million US dollars. Butler Ivan was also very tired, but he still did a very detailed statistical work. Well, I know. Mawei replied lightly. The exchange rate in 2000 was 8:1 between the US dollar and the RMB, which was very cost effective to use for domestic consumption. However, of the 27 courtyard houses that Mawei bought, at least 1/3 will face demolition. This is still a headache, and he is powerless to change it. After all, the city needs to develop, and some old buildings must be appropriately demolished. For this reason, Mawei also has to entrust his family's relationship in Beijing to help look after it. If there is a relocation or something, notify it in time. In order to avoid the relocation team, when they can't find anyone, they think it is an empty house and then forcibly demolish the house. In that case, Mawei will have to return to China to sue, which will cause a lot of trouble. He doesn't lack the compensation for this lawsuit. He doesn't want to make the relationship too stiff, and he doesn't want to confront his compatriots in court. Moreover, China is still a very reliable ally, honest and friendly, and no country wants to break up with him. For the sake of his own development in the future, Mawei must make a plan in advance. After buying almost all the courtyard houses on the market, Mawei is also ready to take his private plane back to Russia. In these 3 days, the pre-sale of his second issue of Counter-Strike has been extremely popular online. 300,000 CDKs, as if they were snatching something. 150,000 copies have been sold. At this rate, it is estimated that they will be sold out within a week, which is even more terrifying than the speed of the first phase 500,000 CDKs, a total of 14 million US dollars. When Counter-Strike is launched globally, and elements such as the prop mall and weapon skins are integrated, this number will increase by dozens of times. In other words, this shooting game alone can bring Mawei at least 300 million to 700 million US dollars in profit. Not to mention that he will also make popular games such as Warcraft 3, World of Warcraft, Diablo 2, and Hearthstone in the future. That way, he will make more money. Moreover, Blizzard will definitely go public to raise money, and its future market value will develop into hundreds of billions of US dollars. All the game blueprints are in Mawei's mind. He doesn't need to worry about the resignation of senior executives, nor does he need to worry about fierce competition. As long as he could repeat the theme and highlights of the game through memory, someone would naturally develop games for him in that direction. After acquiring the 27 courtyard houses in Jing and investing in Alibaba, the deposit in Mawei's bank card turned into 257 million US dollars. Chapter 66 Russian Navy. Blizzard received $14 million. Excluding tax deductions, Mawei now has about $270 million in funds, and the assets he owns are difficult to estimate. He has obviously worked hard to invest and spend money, but the money is getting harder and harder to spend. For many reasons, Mawei decided to launch his Russian military industry development plan one step ahead. Anyway, Blizzard is now profitable, and he has earned back the money he spent on acquiring the company. Amazon in the United States is also gradually getting on the right track. Google's influence is also slowly spreading. Vguest Video is about to become one of the top 3 video websites in the United States, with daily traffic rising to 30,000 people. Alibaba's financing has also been completed. With this strong capital, Boss Ma believes that he will soon be able to develop the company into the largest e-commerce platform in the country. So now Mawei has almost nothing to worry about. As long as he keeps a portion of liquid funds for emergencies, he can do whatever he wants and buy whatever he wants. On the way to the farm in the suburbs, Mawei thought carefully and said to the butler, "Ivan, let the family send people to investigate the shipyards in various places to see which ones can be acquired." "Okay, young master." The butler immediately started to contact according to Mawei's instructions. for his young master's excitement and development of the Mikoyan family. The loyal butler was sincerely happy for the master and his wife. Since the master and his wife died in a car accident, the young master has been immersed in sadness and confusion all day long, and his personality has gradually become perverse. The butler prayed almost every day during those days, hoping that the young master would cheer up as soon as possible. And now, seeing Maweli's changes, the old butler is really indescribably happy. Even if the money Maweli invested was wasted, he would be willing to support. The reason why Maweli put his first step in military industry in the field of shipbuilding. That's because Russia's navy is well known to be weak. Since the disintegration of the Soviet Union, the largest Black Sea shipyard has been divided to neighboring Ukraine. This directly led to the decline of its Pacific Fleet, Northern Fleet, Black Sea Fleet, Baltic Fleet, and Caspian Fleet every year. According to the memory of the previous life, after independence, Russia has never started to build a newly designed large destroyer of more than 6,000 tons. The main battleships currently in service in the Russian Navy are only the modern class destroyers designed in 1980 and the large anti-submarine ships of the Dreadnought class. The newly built warships are basically medium-sized and light frigates, as well as nearshore combat units such as missile boats. They do not have the ability to march in the open sea. As for the aircraft carrier battle group with the title of Ocean Overlord, Russia only has the Kuznetsov aircraft carrier. Originally, when the Soviet Union collapsed, Russia had 8 aircraft carrier battle groups. But because the economy is really bad, to put it bluntly, it can't afford it. So they all withdrew from the establishment. Some continued to serve in other countries. Some became aircraft carrier theme parks, or were directly dismantled. It is precisely because of the above situations that Maweli spent so much time to lay out the economy in advance, acquire so many unicorn companies in the previous life. Otherwise, no matter how much money he has in his pocket, it will be burned up by military industry sooner or later. When the butler contacted shipyards in various places through family connections, the Tiger armored convoy that Maweli was riding in also drove to a farm estate outside Moscow. Go and pick Winnie up from the car and let her choose her new friend, Maweli instructed the bodyguard. The reason why he came to this farm estate was because the tigress of the owner of the farm gave birth to a group of tiger cubs. So Maweli was warmly invited to come and choose. In order to prevent tigers and polar bears from being jealous, fighting, and disliking each other as soon as they meet, Maweli asked the maiden Fear to take the polar bear Winnie to choose her little friend by herself. Master Maweli. The maiden Fear handed Winnie's leash to Maweli. She has been in the family for 2 months. Since Maweli is often not at home, and Fear's main task is to play with the little polar bear and take care of her, well, Maweli took the rope and looked at the little polar bear playing on the side of the road. Carefree, he opened his mouth and chewed the grass, probably wanting to taste what it tasted like. Let's go, Winnie, I'll take you to meet new friends. Maweli pulled the rope slightly, and Winnie, who had passed the professional course, followed him obediently, jumping towards the farm. Hello, Mr. Maweli. The tiger has been locked in the cage by us. The little tiger is now 2 months old and is in the fence. You can choose anyone you like. The male owner of the manor has business dealings with the Maweli family. So this little tiger is not for sale, but a gift to Maweli in order to get closer to him. Yeah. Maweli nodded after hearing this. A lactating tigress has the nature to protect her children. When a stranger or a strange animal approaches, the tiger will attack instinctively. If it is not locked, something serious will happen. When Maweli brought the polar bear to the fence, where the little tiger was raised, the maiden Fear asked Winnie lovingly, Winnie, which tiger cub do you like? Tell me. Winnie seemed to understand what an Fear meant, so she curiously came to the fence, and then leaned over with her wet little nose, as if sniffing something in front of the fence. Animals distinguish each other by smell, so they can tell whether they like or dislike something by just smelling it. At the same time, the 4 tiger cubs in the fence, after seeing the little polar bear, walked towards her curiously with courage. The little tiger's staggering appearance and furry body were cute and fun. Sure enough, this big cat was not called for nothing. Maybe it was because of the similar smell, or maybe it was because they were attracted to each other. After sniffing around, Winnie stopped in front of a tiger cub that developed later and looked the smallest. At this time, Maweli called the owner of the manor and asked him, "What is the name of this little tiger?" "She doesn't have a name yet, Mr. Maweli. You can give her a name." The farm owner answered Maweli with a smile. Maweli bent down and took out the fierce little tiger. The tiger baby screamed desperately at the touch of strangers and opened her little paws, trying to show that she was fierce. However, at this moment, the maiden fear took out a bottle from somewhere and then gently put the pacifier into the tiger's mouth. The tiger baby still insisted on struggling, but after accidentally tasting the delicious milk, it suddenly calmed down and sucked the milk. This scene made Winnie, the polar bear lying on the ground, anxious, and she also kept screaming and stood on her hind legs, wanting to have a share. Chapter 67 North Sea Shipyard. Maweli looked at the two footers in front of him and couldn't help but smiled and shook his head. After the little tiger and the polar bear shared the bottle, the two little guys became friends and were taken home by Maweli. As for the name of the tiger baby, Maweli decided to call her Simba. But this seems to be the name of the Lion King. So in the end, she was named Little Tigger. It has the same purpose as Little Bear Winnie. On the way back to the villa, Maweli held Little Tigger in his left hand and Little Polar Bear Winnie in his right hand, sitting in the back seat of the Rolls Royce. This rich life is really nourishing. Master, Google and VGuest video just received news. It is said that some investors want to invest in the company recently. So I want to ask your opinion. Butler Ivan turned around and asked Maweli for instructions. The popularity of Counter-Strike is closely related to the publicity and drainage of Google and VGuest. It makes some capitalists notice the importance of network effects and online publicity. So those who want to share the cake look for Maweli for financing. What are the backgrounds of the investors? Send someone to investigate. If they are of ordinary status, just reject them directly. Maweli answered casually while touching the furry head and ears of the little tiger. Google and VGuest Video are American companies after all. When they grow up thoroughly, Maweli's Russian identity will more or less affect the company. Therefore, in the end, it is necessary to find someone to invest and resolve risks. However, this investor is not someone who can come to invest with money. At least the other party must have a solid background in the ability to deal with the relevant departments. In this way, Maweli can join forces with them, hold shares of each other's group, and closely bind the interests of both parties together. In professional terms, it is a community of interests. This is the rule of the game in the world of the rich. Although Maweli was reborn, he has no system. So many things cannot be taken for granted. Okay, master, I will send someone to check. The butler said respectfully. Well, Maweli looked out the window and looked at the beautiful scenery of the setting sun. What he wants to know most now is how many shipyards are interested in acquisition and transfer. He can't wait to show his skills and make a career. A week later, Maweli took a special plane to St. Petersburg, Russia. This is the holy land of Russian shipbuilding companies, with many shipyards with a long history. For example, the Russian Admiral Shipyard, the Baltic Shipyard, the Leningrad Admiralty Shipyard, the Zdanov Shipyard, etc. And what Maweli is going to today is not the above mentioned shipyards. It is a shipyard called North Sea Shipyard. The St. Petersburg North Sea Shipyard is smaller than the Admiral Shipyard in the Baltic Shipyard and cannot build aircraft carriers. But it has the strength to build large ships such as nuclear-powered cruisers and destroyers. The shipyard is the cradle of the Navy. Maweli can completely use it to get along well with the Navy. This will be of great help at that time. A strong military is always the best way to deter the scoundrels. Master, the chairman of the North Sea Company, Leglov, is waiting for you at the dock. In the Rolls Royce, the butler Ivan said to Maweli. Well, okay, I got it. Maweli looked at the outline of the shipyard emerging in the distance and nodded slightly. After privatization and restructuring, the North Sea Shipyard was separated from the jurisdiction of the Russian Federation Ministry of Defense and established the North Sea Shipyard Joint Stock Company. Because of this, it has the opportunity to be traded. Maweli looked at the outline of the shipyard in the distance and gradually enlarged it. Compared with the modern military shipyard in his impression, the North Sea Shipyard seemed very lifeless. The rusty iron gate, it can be seen that it has not been painted for a long time. The old man at the door was also weak, as if he would fall asleep at any time. When the convoy entered the factory, there were almost no groups of people in the huge North Sea shipyard. Tons of steel were randomly placed in the open space, corroded by the air for a long time, and stained with a layer of rust. Through the open door, Mawei saw that the machinery and equipment in the factory were rusty, and the machine tools were abandoned in the open courtyard, exposed to the wind and rain. Due to the disintegration of the Soviet Union, the Soviet Navy was forced to stop production of many ships ordered from the North Sea shipyard. As a result, the huge amount of money invested in the shipyard was all wasted, and the entire enterprise was on the verge of bankruptcy. Coupled with the crisis of Russia's economic transformation, the North Sea shipyard has not received large orders for a long time. Therefore, the economic status of the entire shipyard can be said to be falling apart, and bankruptcy is only a matter of time. The convoy continued to drive forward for a while, and came to the largest dry dock of the North Sea shipyard. The dock is 100,000 tons. The total length is nearly 370 meters, extending 140 meters to the land side and 72 meters wide. The majestic port cranes are horizontally mounted on both sides of the dock, and there are also 100-ton cranes on the side to transport heavy objects in. Mawei's Rolls-Royce luxury car and the Tiger armored vehicle team look very miniature in front of this 100,000-ton dock, just like a bigger kid. When Mawei walked out of the car, a middle-aged uncle in a suit, with a fat body, a round belly and a Mediterranean head, led the shipyard workers to welcome him. "Hello, Mr. Mawei. Welcome to our Bihai shipyard." This Russian uncle is the chairman of Bihai Shipyard Co. Limited, Leglov. As for the group of workers standing behind him, they are the technical backbones who stayed in the factory. Leglov didn't know that Mawei came this time to discuss the acquisition. He only knew that he came to take a look and maybe place an order for 2 cargo ships. So he called the workers to receive Mawei. "Hello, Mr. Leglov." Mawei stepped forward and shook hands with the uncle. Since both parties have backgrounds in the military industry, even if they met for the first time, they felt particularly familiar. "Haha. Hello. I didn't expect Mr. Mawei to run the family business so well at such a young age. He is really a handsome man." Leglov didn't know about Mawei's investments, but he was not stupid. From the convoy that Mawei was traveling with, it can be seen that the financial strength must be not simple. Unlike him, he ran the century-old shipyard to the end of its rope. The factory originally had more than 7,300 people, but now only has less than 1,900 people. The original more than 1,000 engineers and technicians, only 300 are left. The shipyard's land area of more than 400,000 square meters was wasted in vain. "You're welcome, Mr. Leglov. Compared with your Bihai shipyard, the area of my family's military factory is less than 1/8 of the area, and workers leave almost every month." Chapter 68 Buying a shipyard and entering the military region. "You're welcome, Mr. Leglov. The area of my family's military factory is less than 1/8 of your Bihai shipyard, and workers leave almost every month." Speaking of the Russian military industry, it's really a long story. Without strong funds as a backing, even the top 10 oligarchs in Russia can't afford such huge expenses. "Hey, Mr. Mawei, you are too modest. You have seen our Bihai shipyard. To be honest, if the situation continues to deteriorate, and there are no orders, it is probably a matter of time for the shipyard to file for bankruptcy. I'm afraid that its 110-year history will be ruined in the hands of my generation." Leglov was quite frank. He also knew that this kind of thing could not be hidden from his peers. Although Leglov is the chairman of the Bihai company, but unlike those businessmen who make money from the country, he has his own bottom line and feelings. He neither cheats nor engages in corruption. The only thing he was thinking about was to restore the glory of the North Sea shipyard and restore the glory of the century-old factory. "By the way, Mr. Mawei, I heard that the purpose of your visit this time is to order 2 cargo ships. Are they bulk carriers or container ships?" The North Sea shipyard can not only build military ships, but also commercial ships. This is all forced by the environment. After some contact, Mawei felt that the other party was a real person. so he simply got straight to the point and said to the Russian uncle, "Mr. Leglov, in fact, I came here this time specifically for your North Sea shipyard." As soon as the resounding voice fell, Leglov, who was standing in front of him, was stunned for a moment. "For the North Sea shipyard? What do you mean?" Leglov asked with some confusion. Maweli smiled after hearing this, and then said to Leglov calmly, $42 million. This is my offer for the North Sea shipyard. Unlike previous acquisitions, this time Maweli, as the leader, directly quoted his own price. Whether they agree or not is up to the other party. Anyway, there are so many privatized shipyards in trouble in Russia. They are neither Google nor Amazon, so there is no reason to buy them. This, Mr. Maweli, because it is too sudden. Can you let me think about it? Leglov did have the idea of transferring the shipyard, but when he really faced it, he was a little entangled. It takes time to think it over. Okay. Maweli nodded casually. Tomorrow, he will go to another shipyard. The scale of that shipyard is smaller, and the overall valuation is about $31 million. 5 days later, Maweli, who was lying on the bed in the hotel, received a call from Chairman Leglov. "Hello, Mr. Maweli, I have thought about it these days. I agree with your proposal." Leglov was also entangled for a long time. He also knew that he was short of funds and could not save the situation. If the shipyard was in his hands, it might really go bankrupt. At that time, the hard work of his fathers and the 110-year history of the North Sea shipyard would be destroyed in his hands. Well, then let's find a time to arrange a meeting. Maweli was very happy that Leglov could make such a decision. "Okay, Mr. Maweli." After talking to Leglov on the phone, Maweli called the butler Ivanova. "Does the family have anyone who can talk to you in the Northern Defense Fleet and the Borodin Fleet?" After listening, the butler thought for a while. "There should be someone, young master. Are you going to get in touch with them?" "Well, it's best to arrange a meeting. I have something to talk to them about," Maweli said, while asking the maiden Fear to pour him red wine. Today is a day worth celebrating. His Russian military industry has taken an important first step. Although it cost him a lot of money, there is nothing he can do about it. You can't catch a wolf without sacrificing your child. The key is that the burning of money has just begun. The shipyard itself is actually not worth a lot of money. At best, it is just a large factory with technology. What is really valuable is the ships and warships it builds. Take the modern class destroyer for example. A 956 type destroyer is sold for $420 million. The upgraded version of the modern class destroyer 956M is sold for $730 million. Of course, these are just the external prices. In fact, the cost is not that expensive. The cost of a 956 type destroyer in 2000 was about $51 million. The upgraded version of 956M is $87 million. The profit of the arms business is very lucrative. It's a pity that in peacetime, not many countries will spend money to buy expensive destroyers. The annual maintenance fee alone is a huge expense. To put it bluntly, even the Russian Navy itself cannot afford to build or maintain it. "Okay, young master, I'll send someone to contact them right away." The housekeeper took the order and walked out of the hotel room. Now he unconditionally supports any decision made by Maweli. The reason why Maweli sent someone to contact the Northern Defense Fleet and the Borodin Fleet was because he had a good idea. 4 days later, a military jeep carrying a Russian youth drove into the gate of a certain military district. The military district he entered was under the jurisdiction of the Russian Northern Defense Fleet. The Northern Defense Military District was heavily guarded, with gate checks one after another. After driving for about 20 minutes, the military jeep carrying the youth arrived at the reception room of the military district for reception. "Mr. Maweli, please wait here for a moment. Colonel Yevnigan is on his way." The Russian soldier in charge of reception, dressed in a neat military uniform, said to the young man in the reception room. "Yes." The young man was Maweli. He nodded and waited patiently for the arrival of the naval colonel. Dealing with military bosses, Maweli naturally couldn't bring a group of bodyguards, drive all kinds of luxury cars, and swagger through the streets, including dressing. He tried to be low-key and formal. 5 minutes later, there was a strong and short knock on the door. Knock, knock. Then the door opened, and a middle-aged man in a Russian Navy uniform, with 2 bars and 3 stars embroidered on his shoulders, entered the reception room. The man was full of military style, with a serious expression and sharp eyes, as if nothing in the world could scare them. "Hello, are you Mavey from the Mikoyan family? What's the matter with you this time?" The middle-aged man asked Mavey directly after shaking hands. There was no greeting or any formality. As a soldier, Colonel Yevnigan actually didn't like businessmen like Mavey. He felt that they were always sharpening their heads and wanted to squeeze benefits from others. But his superiors asked him to come and meet Mavey, so this scene happened. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 Grisha, Class V Frigate. Mavey knew that it was useless to beat around the bush when dealing with such a person. So he simply got straight to the point and said to the man, "Colonel Yevnigan, the purpose of my visit this time is to provide free warships to your fleet." As soon as the voice fell, Yevnigan, who was standing in front of him, flickered. But he soon regained his composure. As a soldier, he could not be startled like ordinary people. Even if he was very curious and surprised about Mavey's actions, he would not show it obviously. Provide free warships? Why? Colonel Yevnigan asked Mavey with some caution and some interest. Most of the warships of their northern defense fleet were left over when the Soviet Union collapsed. Although there are many of them, a large part of them are about to be retired or have already been retired. They are having a headache for the replenishment of new warships. Mavey is aware of the plight of the northern defense fleet. Not only did the higher-ups not allocate funds, but they also wanted to cut military spending. So he answered very calmly, "No reason, Colonel Yevnigan. As a citizen of the country, shouldn't it be my duty to support national defense construction?" As soon as he finished speaking calmly, Colonel Yevnigan raised his eyebrows for the first time. He was a little surprised at the awakening of the businessman Mavey. At least in all his years in the Northern Defense Fleet, he rarely met a businessman as highly conscious as Mavey. Mavey saw the colonel's expression calmly. The reason why he wanted to send warships to the Northern Defense Fleet was, first, to support national defense, yes. Second, to have a good relationship with the military, also true. Third, it was because he had his eyes on the retired warships of the fleet. Submarines. According to the memory of the previous life, most of these retired warships and retired submarines of the Russian Navy were thrown directly into the warship cemetery, leaving them to be exposed to the wind and sun, decaying and festering. So instead of throwing them away, it would be better to let Mavey buy them back at a bargain price, then refurbish them and resell them at a high price. Even if the automatic guns and radar equipment on the ship were removed by the military, Mavey still had a way to sell it at a high price. Colonel Yevnigan looked directly into Mavey's eyes, as if he wanted to confirm whether he was sincere or not. Facing the colonel's stare, Mavey, who had lived to live, remained calm and looked back with a very calm look. After about 3 seconds, Colonel Yevnigan nodded slightly and then asked Mavey, "Mr. Mavey, what type of warship will you provide us?" Because of his changed opinion of Mavey, Yevnigan added the word Mr. after Mavey's name to show his respect for him. 2 Grisha V-class frigates. How about it, Colonel Yevnigan? Mavey asked lightly. After hearing this, Colonel Yevnigan thought for a moment, then took the initiative to extend his right hand and said to Mavey, "Thank you, Mr. Mavey. On behalf of the Northern Defense Fleet, I thank you for your strong support." "You're welcome. This is what I should do." Mavey also extended his right hand and shook hands with Colonel Yevnigan. The Grisha V-class frigate he just mentioned is a light frigate with a displacement of 1,050 tons. Each warship costs about $3.2 million US. 2 warships, that is $6.4 million US. This $6.4 million US is a lot of money for the capital-strapped Northern Defense Fleet. But in Mavey's eyes, it is not worth mentioning. And it can be earned back dozens of times. It's so cool. Mavey's generous donation is quite timely for the Northern Defense Fleet. They have a lot of frigates and destroyers that are about to be retired, but they lack new ones as supplements. So when they go out to perform military exercises with other countries, it's quite embarrassing. Because some warships, without funds for maintenance, have begun to rust. By the way, Colonel Yevnigan, the Grisha-class frigates all use the design drawings left over from the Soviet era. Have you ever thought about designing and developing our own new frigates in Russia? Mavey asked Yevnigan in a provocative way. He was so generous in giving away 2 Grisha V-class frigates, not just to establish a good relationship with the Northern Defense Fleet and acquire their retired warships. More importantly, the more long-term point is that his newly purchased North Sea shipyard needs the support of the Russian Central Navigation Equipment Design Bureau. Only in this way can we have the opportunity to participate in the research and development of newer and more advanced frigates, destroyers, and even aircraft carriers. Develop new frigates? Colonel Yevnigan asked with interest. It must be said that Mavey's entry point is very good. Their navy always feels embarrassed because they don't have their own newly developed warships, especially in military exercises with other countries. The frigates and destroyers used by the Russian Navy are almost all left over from the Soviet era. People outside may not know that these warships are too old. Some are even starting to rust. Although they don't say it on the surface, they are more or less envious of the new warships of other countries. After all, warships are the soul of the Navy and the comrades who fight side by side with them. Everyone wants to drive a warship that is powerful and handsome, more powerful than that of other countries. Mavey saw that the other party was interested, so he continued to strike while the iron was hot. Yes, if possible, my Mikoyan family is willing to provide additional funds as research and development funds for new warships. As the saying goes, you can't catch a wolf without sacrificing a child. Mavey knew that the Russian Navy was really short of money. As long as they help him take the lead and introduce those scientists in the Central Navigation Equipment Design Bureau, then with Mavey's memory of his previous life, it should be very smooth to develop a new warship. When the research and development is successful and the new warship is in service, the super orders that follow will definitely revitalize the North Sea shipyard instantly, and at least until 2029. Mr. Mavey, your proposal is not something I can decide, but I will report your opinion to the higher-ups. Thank you again for your support for our Northern Defense Fleet. After some communication, Colonel Yevnigan's impression of Mavey changed a lot. What soldiers want is patriotism and protecting the people. Mavey's generous donations, funding for national defense, and research and development proposals made Colonel Yevnigan feel that everyone is the same kind of person. You're welcome, Colonel Yevnigan, Mavey said with a smile. Although he is a wealthy man, he is different from those financial oligarchs in Russia. They are the termites that hollow out the country's economy and make money from the hard-earned money of the people. The Mavey family's property did not rely on privatization and embezzlement to get rich overnight. The family does not interfere in politics and develops in a low-key manner. So even if he is a wild and showy person, he will not be targeted by the government in the end. On the contrary, he may be regarded as a financial benchmark in Russia and worshipped as a national treasure, which is not necessarily true. Chapter 70. Warship construction begins. By that time, Mavey was awesome. As long as he didn't make any fatal mistakes, almost no one dared to touch him. Even like Boss Ma, going to work at the United Nations was not impossible. After discussing cooperation with the Northern Defense Fleet, Mavey drove directly to his Bihai shipyard. With a cost of $42 million, he became the new chairman of Bihai Shipbuilding Co. Limited. So this time, when he went to the shipyard, Mavey was going to show his face and hold a mobilization meeting in front of all 1,900 employees in the factory. Let the working atmosphere of the entire factory not be as depressed as before. Otherwise, it will affect his future layout. Just when Mavey took a convoy and rushed to Bihai shipyard, at the largest dry dock in the factory, a group of Russian workers in uniforms gathered from various places under the arrangement of the factory leaders. Among these 1,900 employees, about 300 are engineers. The remaining 1,600 are workers, responsible for various aspects of shipbuilding. This time in 2000 was the most difficult period for Russian military industry. At that time, the per capita funding for Russian military scientific research personnel was only 1/50 of that in the United States. It is no exaggeration to say that the income of rocket engineers is not as good as that of Moscow cleaners. Many workers and technicians can only rely on being security guards or driving taxis to make a living. So the shipyard, which originally had 7,300 people, now has only 1,900 people. There are reasons for this. No one wants to give up a decent engineering job to be a security guard or a cleaner. They are all forced to do so. Under the command of the factory leaders, 1,900 shipyard employees quickly gathered in the dry dock. Now the only thing they have to do is to wait for the new chairman Maweli to give a speech on stage. Say some high-sounding words to win people's hearts and work hard for the shipyard. In their eyes, capitalists are nothing more than this, desperately squeezing the labor of workers in order to make money. The key is that wages have not risen. Although the words they say are nice, they are mostly empty words. The workers have such views, not deliberately targeting Maweli alone. But the general environment in Russia at that time was like this. It is good enough if the monthly salary of employees can be paid on time. If it is delayed, we don't know when we can get the money. 10 minutes later, Maweli drove to the dry dock in his military jeep. His appearance immediately attracted the attention of all employees. 1,900 pairs of eyes looked at him in unison. Everyone looked at him differently. The younger workers revealed envy and jealousy in their eyes, because they saw that the new chairman was about the same age as them. The information revealed in the eyes of some slightly older workers was more complicated. They saw that Maweli was so young and his experience was definitely not rich enough. The first reaction was to doubt whether he could manage the shipyard well and whether he could be competent for the position of chairman. Among them, some old employees with very long qualifications were especially worried. They were veteran workers of BH shipyard and had witnessed the rise and fall and glory of the shipyard. They were very worried that Maweli would ruin the entire factory due to his lack of experience. Hey, the new chairman is too young, isn't he? He seems to be even younger than my son. Can he be trusted? A Russian worker covered in oil couldn't help but discuss with his companion in a low voice. I don't know. I just hope that I can get paid on time every month. Otherwise I can only go back to the countryside to farm. His colleague shook his head helplessly. He didn't care who changed the chairman of the shipyard, as long as the salary was paid as usual. The two people's discussion was glared at by an old employee standing in the front row. It means that they only know their immediate interests and don't know how to unite and overcome difficulties. There are many situations like the above in the team of 1,900 people. The focus of most people's discussion is that the new chairman is too young and seems to have little experience. Compared with the original chairman, Leglov, Maweli seems to be less convincing. It is the ability to make people believe and be convinced. Ahem. Chairman Maweli, welcome to the North Sea Shipyard. My name is Mikhail, and I'm the director of the North Sea Shipyard. The man next to me is Mikhail, who warmly welcomed Maweli, is a kind-looking Russian uncle. He led the factory leaders to Maweli's jeep and enthusiastically introduced the leadership team of the North Sea Shipyard to Maweli. Hello. Maweli shook hands with them one by one, and then went to the high platform with the factory director Mikhail to prepare for the next speech. Seeing the noisy scene in the audience, the factory director had to say loudly to everyone, "Everyone, please be quiet. Now I will introduce to you, this is our new chairman of the North Sea Shipyard, Mr. Maweli. Please welcome him with warm applause." Mikhail took the initiative to applaud after he finished speaking, and the factory leaders in the audience also applauded and echoed. But the 1,900 employees around him did not seem very enthusiastic. The applause was sparse and did not match their actual number at all. Mikhail glanced at Maweli awkwardly. The current situation of the factory is that the overall morale is low. The employees have not been able to get work for a long time and can only get a meager fixed salary without bonuses. They have no motivation to go to work. Chairman Maweli. Mikhail gave the standing microphone to Maweli and stood aside tactfully, waiting for Maweli to speak. 1,900 pairs of eyes in the audience were all staring at Maweli. Even if no one spoke, the terrifying silence could make the timid people so nervous that they stuttered. and Maweli has lived 2 lives and experienced so many things. For him, this kind of scene can be endured by gritting his teeth. He held the microphone with his hand and then said to the audience, "Hello, everyone. I'm the new chairman of BH Shipbuilding Co. Limited. My name is Maweli." After he finished speaking, he paused and then continued, "I personally don't like to say empty words, nor do I want to say them. So here, I want to tell you a very real news, that is, our BH shipyard has recently received an order for 2 Grisha V-class frigates, which are about to be completed. In other words, we have work to do." As soon as the resounding voice fell, the 1,900 employees standing in the audience suddenly looked at Maweli again with bright eyes. In the current situation of the shipyard, nothing can activate morale more than warship orders. What? Did I hear it right just now? Our factory has an order? 2 Grisha V-class frigates? The new chairman has brought us 2 Grisha V-class frigates. It seems that he is quite capable. Now the salary for the whole year in the future is guaranteed. And there are performance bonuses. Chapter 71, Refitting a Warship. Maweli's warship order made more than 1,900 people in the factory happy for a long time. They haven't received a decent order for a long time. Before, they could only make a living by building cargo ships and fishing boats. Maweli looked at the excited people in the audience and had to say that the workers working in the shipyard were actually very simple. They were happy when there were orders and sad when there were no orders. To put it bluntly, it was to support their families and make life better. Please don't get too excited. This is just the first good news I brought. There is a second one. Maweli said to the audience indifferently. Then he clapped his hands and asked the Russian bodyguard waiting next to him to push a large wooden box to the front of the stage. After experiencing the good news just now, the 1,900 employees in the factory are now looking forward to Maweli's second news. The original suspicion and resistance to him were also washed away by the frigate order. Everyone watched the bodyguards push the wooden box to the front of the stage. Then a bodyguard opened the box and saw that the wooden box was filled with dark green banknotes. And they were US dollars. I'm not seeing things. The box is full of US dollars. A shipbuilding engineer standing in the front row said loudly in disbelief. His surprise successfully surprised the people in the back row. Ah, US dollars? Is the chairman going to give us money? There is no news that is more exciting than giving money on the spot. Maweli knew this very well, so he paid the employees' wages for the next month in advance this month in order to boost morale. And he himself did not lose anything. Please don't get excited. Line up one by one, and everyone will get one. Maweli looked at the crowd and said, the US dollars in the wooden box were all small bills of $5 and $10. This is also convenient for the workers to use, which can be said to be very thoughtful. However, what Maweli didn't expect was that the Russian bodyguard who was responsible for opening the box actually opened the lid of the wooden box by mistake. Then the sea breeze from the port blew some of the US dollars in the box away. Suddenly, the eyes of the crowd were filled with dark green US dollars fluttering in the wind. Maweli, standing on the stage, looked at the US dollars floating in front of him and drifting away with the wind. He felt so speechless that he wanted to chop people. Fortunately, the other bodyguards were quick-witted and quickly closed the lid again without causing too much damage. It is estimated that only 2,500 US dollars were blown away and flew far away. As for the money that was blown closer, it was picked up by the workers and returned. They are shipyard workers, not bandits, robbers, or the kind of market scoundrels. They make money with their own hands. Maweli finally felt a little relieved about this phenomenon. The Russian bodyguard who made a mistake twisted his face with a bitter melon throughout the whole process and was worried and anxious all day long. Maweli was really helpless about these loyal but low IQ Russian bodyguards. He could only punish them slightly to make them remember it for a long time. Look at the group of workers under his command who are receiving their wages in an orderly manner. Maweli held the microphone and added to them, go back and tell your old friends that, if they want to return to the shipyard to continue working, I welcome them here. The entire shipyard cannot be supported by 1,900 workers. Those workers and engineers who left were forced to change their jobs. So Maweli will give them another chance. and the communication of this opportunity is to let the employees on duty to pass it on for him. I believe that they will be happy to help with the money Maweli gave them. Moreover, the shipyard has orders, which means stable income and high bonuses. I believe no one will be willing to give up this opportunity to make money. Maweli's series of actions made the factory director Mikhail standing next to him, and the factory leaders in the audience amazed. They never thought that the young new chairman would be so capable and courageous. Although some things are not convenient to say, it seems that following the new chairman is more enjoyable than the previous one. Due to the timely arrival of the order for 2 Grisha V-class frigates, coupled with Maweli's generosity in paying a month's salary in advance, these measures have revitalized the working atmosphere of the entire North Sea shipyard. Even those workers and engineers who were forced to leave the shipyard returned to their jobs in twos and threes and devoted themselves to the production of warships. 3 days later, in a mansion in the center of Moscow, the butler Ivan covered his phone with his hand and turned back to Maweli on the sofa and asked, "Master, the batch of warships retired by the Northern Defense Fleet have been transported to the shipyard. What should they do with it next?" Maweli played with Tiger's ears while stepping on Winner's soft white belly and then replied to the butler, "Remove the rust, paint it, and then convert it into a luxury yacht." That's right. The reason why Maweli gave the Northern Defense Fleet 2 light frigates was not only to establish a good relationship with the fleet and let them introduce it to the Central Navigation Bureau, but also because he was interested in the batch of warships they retired. Buy them all, convert them into luxury yachts, and then sell them to the group of local tycoons I met in Dubai last time. This business is definitely profitable, and you can make money without doing anything. Even if the local tycoons in Dubai don't buy a lot, Maweli can also spread this news through the influence of Google, VK, and Amazon. I believe there will always be some rich people who think yachts are not powerful enough and want to buy luxury yachts and luxury cruise ships converted from warships. Just imagine buying a big destroyer and making it a yacht. That kind of spirit will definitely crush those sissy little yachts when it goes out. Of course, the automatic artillery and important instruments on the destroyer will be unloaded by the Navy before the transaction. After all, these things cannot be owned by private individuals, and it is impossible to trade them to individuals. "Bring the satellite phone," Maweli said to the servant while stroking the tiger. After getting the satellite phone, he called his friend in Dubai. "Hello, is that AMR? Yes, this is Maweli. How is the modified sports car I sent you last time? This time we have a batch of more stylish modified cars. Do you want to come to Russia to have a look? Okay, it's okay to bring more friends. See you then." Because of the modified Bugatti last time, Maweli has a close relationship with these Dubai princelings. When it comes to spending money to show off his wealth, Maweli is not inferior to these Dubai princelings. But Dubai is so rich, it's time to take some money from them. Chapter 72 Aircraft Gun. 5 weeks later, Maweli's friends in Dubai, AMR, Amir and others, took a private plane to St. Petersburg. This time, they were accompanied by not only the rich people who went to Europe to blow up the streets last time, but also invited a powerful figure in Dubai, Haman Mohammed. This is a nobleman in Dubai and has a very close relationship with the Dubai royal family. The oil fields controlled by the Haman family are estimated to be worth more than $1.8 billion US. This was already very impressive at the time. So the private plane that Haman took was a Boeing 737 medium and short-range twin-engine jet airliner. The whole aircraft cost $11 million US. Maweli's Gulfstream G200 was like a child in front of the Boeing 737, almost half the size. This is why Maweli wanted to make money to buy an A380. It was because the world-class rich were too inhumane. He didn't want to look smaller than others. The Boeing 737 passenger plane slowly landed at St. Petersburg International Airport. Sitting in the cabin, Haman Mohammed, wearing a pure white hat and a white robe that Arabs usually wear, sat with his legs crossed and looked out the window. The flip-flops on his feet were very eye-catching. "Has the Russian friend you mentioned arranged everything? I'm coming with you this time, so don't let me down." Haman spoke lightly to Amir and others. As a nobleman in Dubai, he always travels by airlifting luxury cars regardless of whether there is a bombing or not. The reason is that this ass can't get used to sitting in a too shabby car and feels cheap. It should be alright. We are assured of my friend's work. Amma thought of the Bugatti sports car modified by Tomovy, which was so cool that even the Dubé royal family asked him where he modified it. That's why he dared to speak for Tomovy so confidently and flew so far to bring his friends to Tomovy to reminisce about the past. The circle of rich people is like this. They like to stick together. It's not like in novels and movies where they would kill the other party or the whole family at any time. Hammond nodded after hearing this and then asked the servant, "Are all the cars ready?" "Already, Master Hammond." The servant replied respectfully. "Yes." Hammond looked out the window. The Ferrari Enzo he had just ordered from Ferrari was being unloaded from the transport plane by bodyguards. Ferrari Enzo is a legendary model in history, named after the company's founder, Enzo Ferrari. It is a replacement for Ferrari F50, with a 12-cylinder mid-mounted engine and an acceleration time of 3.65 seconds per 100 kilometers. Originally, the car was supposed to be manufactured by Ferrari in 2002, but the factory time in the parallel world was advanced by 2 years. Mawei also ordered this sports car from Ferrari, but he hasn't picked up the car yet. Because sports cars need to be produced one by one, the delivery time of each person is different. Relatively important or ordered first will be ranked first. So Harmon, who mentioned the car first, has the capital to show off the car. When the bright yellow Ferrari Enzo sports car was transported to the Boeing 737 by bodyguards, Harmon, Amma and others were also ready to get off the plane and meet Mawei in a special car. However, just when the plane door was opened and everyone got off the plane one by one, not far from the airport, 3 dark gold bulletproof SUVs suddenly drove over. In addition, there were a number of camouflage Tiger armored vehicles. The 3 dark gold SUVs at the head were the handmade Corbatch T98 Warshield bulletproof car. This car not only has a domineering appearance and a kingly demeanor, but also has the noble royal bloodline of Russia. Corbatch is the oldest armored car brand in the world. Each car has been carefully carved by 28 senior engineers for 1,500 hours and is purely handmade. Only then can this unique automotive artwork be produced. In terms of its rarity, the Corbatch Warshield is rarer and more domineering than the Ferrari Enzo. The bulletproof level of the K-Borg T98 is B6, which can block attacks from professional killers, machine guns, explosives, Molotov cocktails and grenades. The bottom of the vehicle is non-magnetic, which can prevent magnetic mines from sticking to it and causing great damage to the people in the vehicle. The steel plate of the vehicle is 3 + 2 mm thick, and the bulletproof glass is 14.5 mm thick, which can protect against 9 mm Gruel pistols or 357 caliber Magnum pistols. Hammond, Amma and others who got off the plane stared at the 3 K-Borg warshields in front of them, leading several Tiger armored vehicles all the way. At this time, Harmon pointed at the machine gun on the battle shield vehicle curiously and then asked the bodyguard beside him, "What type of machine gun is that? Why does it look so big?" "Gatling?" Faced with Harmon's lack of understanding, the bodyguard showed a trace of embarrassment after hearing it. "Master, that seems to be a 30 to 165 mm general purpose aviation cannon developed by the Russian military with an ammunition caliber of 30 mm. Gatling refers to the general term for multi-barrel rotary machine guns, which also belongs to this type. It was difficult for the bodyguard to explain. All multi-barrel rotary machine guns and cannons can be collectively referred to as Gatling. However, the size of the firepower and the degree of damage are very different according to the caliber firepower. For example, machine guns and aviation cannons are two different things. The Russian 30 to 165 mm general purpose aviation cannon is loaded on the top of the battle shield vehicle. It is a single barrel machine gun with a recoil and sliding core. It uses cold air loading and electric control shooting with an initial shooting velocity of 700 to 1000 meters per second. The firing rate is 800 to 1050 rounds per minute. Such powerful firepower is usually installed on MiG fighters. One round of fire can turn a light tank into a SUV. Just as Harmon was communicating with the bodyguards, a Russian bodyguard in a suit suddenly got out of the leading K-Bay Warshield car. "Excuse me, are you Mr. Amir and Mr. Amir?" These 3 warshields are prepared for you by my young master Maweli. The young master is now in the shipyard, and we will take you there. Amir and others did not airlift sports cars to St. Petersburg. After all, their modified sports cars were all obtained by Maweli. Naturally, they could not show off in front of Maweli. Besides, Maweli also said on the phone that there was a batch of more stylish modified goods waiting for them, so they had no reason to be too ostentatious in front of Maweli, in order to avoid being humiliated instead of showing off. Of course, they also told Harman about this tactfully, but the Dubai oil prince didn't listen, so Amir had no choice. So in the end, Amir and others got on the KB warshield self-prepared by Maweli for them. But Harman couldn't save his face and continued to drive his Ferrari Enzo sports car and followed the convoy. After the airport pickup just now, Amir and others deeply understood. It turns out that Russian tycoons like Maweli usually play with bulletproof SUVs and high-powered aircraft cannons at home. Such cool and awesome work is really impressive. Chapter 73, Helipad, Garage, Powerful Water Cannon. After the airport pickup just now, Amir and others finally understood deeply. It turns out that Russian tycoons like Maweli usually play with bulletproof SUVs and high-powered aircraft cannons at home. Such cool and awesome work is really impressive. However, what they don't know is that when the convoy is about to drive to the Bihai shipyard, 2 military green T-90 main battle tanks are parked in front of the shipyard. It seems to be welcoming the arrival of the convoy. Although the little white hats from the Middle East are wealthy and have countless sports cars, they have never seen such a battle. They can't be compared with Maweli, who grew up in a pile of arms. So the expressions on the faces of Amir and others are obviously shocked by the majestic T-90 main battle tank. They can't imagine that the toys of Russian tycoons, in addition to aircraft cannons, also have land tanks with amazing destructive power. These things are much more awesome than the sports cars they bought. Driving on the road, I'm afraid that the rate of turning heads of tanks will be much higher than that of various sports cars. However, the national policies are different. Dubai does not allow private ownership of this thing at all. Even guns are strictly controlled, and alcohol cannot be drunk in public. At this moment, Amir and others are somewhat envious of Maweli's life, including Harman, who drove silently and followed the team. They all expressed envy of these powerful toys that Maweli has. When the KB Warshield team drove all the way to the shipyard dock, everyone saw their old friend, Maweli, standing in front of the dock. Haha. Brother Maweli, long time no see. The Bugatti that I asked you to modify last time is so cool. Driving on the road, the rate of turning heads is super high. Amir and others gave Maweli a warm hug as soon as they saw him. And when they hugged, they gave him a cheek-to-cheek touch to show intimacy. Maweli really couldn't stand the little white hats, who greeted him with unshaven faces. If it was a group of beautiful women, then it would be fine to endure it. The key is that a group of big men with big beards are so close to each other. I feel that after going around, the skin on my face will be shaved by the beard. Brother Maweli, let me introduce you. This is Haman Mohammed, our famous oil prince in Dubai. Amr introduced Haman to Maweli. Hello. Haman smiled and stretched out his right hand. Hello. Maweli stretched out his hand and shook hands with the other party. Then, Haman asked Maweli with curiosity, before I came, I heard from Amr that you have a batch of cool modified sports cars here? Because Maweli did not say what the modification was on the phone. So Amr and others subconsciously thought that Maweli had modified some car again. Maybe it was like in the Batman movie, add machine guns, cannons, nitrogen acceleration systems, etc. to the sports car. These crazy things can only be done by Americans and Russians. After all, their environment allows it. Unlike Dubai, everything is strictly controlled. Maweli shook his head after hearing this. This time I modified not a sports car, but our Russian Grisha class frigate and the Dreadnought class destroyer. As soon as Maweli finished speaking, Haman Muhammad and the white hatted Amr and Amir beside him were stunned by his words. For almost a full second, no one spoke, and they didn't know what to say next. Dreadnought class destroyer? Grisha class frigate? How to modify it? Wouldn't it be converted into a yacht? Hammond seemed to have thought of something, but he was a little unsure. Converting a warship into a luxury yacht is a great idea. If you go to the high seas and encounter pirates, they may be scared and turn around and run away immediately, not to mention coming to rob. Moreover, the luxury yacht converted from a warship can meet the uniqueness and coolness that the rich want. Compared with those river yachts and water yachts that can be bought with money, the world-class tycoons prefer awesome creativity and luxury goods that are limited in quantity worldwide. To put it bluntly, it is the feeling of being refreshed that others do not have, but they do. After all, they have seen many ordinary brands of yachts, but they have never seen a luxury yacht in the form of a warship. Maweli simply said one sentence and completely attracted the expectations and attention of the little white hats. That's right, all those retired warships are converted into luxury yachts. Dreadnought class destroyers, cash-in class destroyers, modern class destroyers. It's manly to sail such warships. Maweli said to everyone lightly. It is difficult for this group of little white hats in debate to come into contact with military forces. And they are the world's top Navo-Rish, who like to hunt for novelties and all kinds of alternative and high-profile things to show off their wealth. So more or less, they have become interested in the warship modification described by Maweli. So Maweli struck while the iron was hot and led the little white hats directly to the dry dock for the modified warship. Let them witness the Grisha third-class frigate that has been modified into a rough outline up close. In the dry dock, that has not yet been filled with water, a bright white shuttle-shaped yacht, with a slender figure of 104 meters, is very handsomely presented on the keel pier. The yacht has the hull outline of the Grisha frigate, and inherits the luxury and beauty of the yacht in appearance. The overall look is very much like a vigorous dolphin. Before this Grisha third-class frigate was specially designed to deal with submarines, and the hull is very solid. The ship can have a spa, a helipad, a swimming pool, a luxury car garage, a luxury suite, or a powerful water cannon. Even if you like to study galaxies, you can install an astronomical telescope on the top and go out to sea at night to see the stars. And you don't have to worry about encountering pirates, because they must have never seen such a fierce yacht. Maweli simply described the luxury of the yacht to the little white hats. Whether it is a helicopter pad, a luxury car garage, or a swimming pool, these elements are not available to other yacht brands. I dare not even imagine it. Who can imagine that a yacht actually has a helipad, a garage and a powerful water cannon? That's really DB. Maweli's luxury yacht, which was converted from a warship, was a semi-finished product that he asked the workers and engineers of the North Sea shipyard to work overtime. Only the appearance has been changed, and the interior decoration of the yacht has not been completed yet. But being able to do this is enough, because the group of Dubai white hats standing next to him were amazed by its domineering and agile appearance when they saw this cool yacht. Chapter 74 Yacht Party. The group of Dubai white hats standing next to him were amazed by the domineering and vigorous appearance of this cool yacht. Coupled with Maweli's deception, many people have begun to imagine what a cool scene it would be to go fishing on such a cool yacht. I'm afraid that, even if I meet the Prince of Dubai, I can completely overshadow him. By the way, I can also use a water cannon to show off my operation. Brother Maweli, is this yacht really converted from a frigate? How much does it cost? If it needs private customization, will the shipyard accept it? How long is the delivery time? What is the price for the modification and customization of the Dreadnought class destroyer? Are there any design options to choose from? Maweli had expected the enthusiastic response of the white hats, because according to his memory in his previous life, there were several Dubai tycoons who bought 4,000-ton and 2,000-ton retired warships and converted them into yachts for fun. They also specially hired designers to hand paint the interior decoration and exterior effects, and then matched them with advanced equipment such as forward-looking sonar and night vision monitoring, just to create a movable sea mansion. The amount of retired warships is not expensive, the key is that they are limited in number. For example, I only have 3 Grisha class frigates, 5 landing ships, and 4 missile boats. It took a lot of effort to get them here. Maweli explained to the little white hats with reason and emotion. This made everyone's desire to buy even higher, because Maweli instilled in them a concept That is, the number is limited, first come first served. Therefore, after Maweli took the little white hats to visit the dock, Hammond knew Hammer took the lead and asked him to order a Grisha-class light frigate, and also paid a 45% deposit, which is $3.9 million US. As for the remaining 55% of the payment, it will have to wait for Maweli's North Sea shipyard to confirm the design plan of the frigate, the details of the interior decoration, materials, etc., and accurately complete it before it can be delivered. With Hammond's start, the other white hats also joined in the fun and ordered several ships. Some bought frigates, while others bought relatively smaller ones. For example, landing ships, missile boats, etc. After a round of hot rush, Maweli's North Sea shipyard sold 2 Grisha-class frigates alone. That is, sales of $17.32 million US. The remaining landing ships, missile boats, and even submarines were also sold a lot, adding up to a total of 6 ships. That is, $19.56 million US. The 8 retired ships added together directly brought Maweli's North Sea shipyard $36.88 million US in revenue. These ships are expected to be completed within 4 years. The price they were originally bought from the Navy was an average of only $160,000 US per ship. 8 warships were less than $1.5 million US, but they were sold at a sky-high price of $36.88 million US. Seeing this, the factory director Mikhail and the factory leaders could not help but admire them. The only thing missing is to worship the chairman, Maweli. When the white hats were confirming the design drawings with the shipyard engineers, the factory director Mikhail quietly came to Maweli and said to him, "Chairman Maweli, you are really amazing. I have passed on today's good news to all departments of the shipyard. The workers are very enthusiastic and are almost overjoyed. Well, it's good to be happy, but don't be too happy. You can't delay your work. These allies in Dubai are Maweli's long-term customers, and he will have a lot of business to do with them in the future." Good. I know this, Chairman. Mikhail hasn't been as happy as he is today for a long time. Watching the North Sea shipyard, under Maweli's leadership, getting better day by day. Mikhail said it was no exaggeration to say that he could wake up with a smile in his dreams. "Have you arranged the evening activities?" Maweli asked Mikhail. "Everything is arranged, Chairman." "Well, that's good." Maweli nodded lightly. He can't just make money from his allies without entertaining them. Otherwise, the white hats will think that he is a miser, which will affect future business. After all the details of the renovation were roughly discussed, Maweli invited the white hats to board his luxury yacht. Although the yacht is a large luxury yacht, it cannot be compared with the yacht converted from a warship, and its length is only 45 meters. But fortunately, the interior is quite spacious and the decoration is luxurious, so it is not too bad to entertain guests. In the cabin, there must be chefs, bartenders, DJs, and waiters. As an important part of the yacht party, beauties and young models are naturally indispensable. Speaking of beauties, all the people who came to Maweli's party were Russian girls with good figures, fair skin, and youthful beauty. It's not like the last time I went to Europe, there were young models from all countries. The reason is that countries like Russia and Ukraine are famous for producing beautiful women all over the world. Even if a woman is not a young model, her appearance is not much worse than that of an artist or a star. And the more crucial point is that all Russian girls are very hot. This hot does not only refer to their figure and face, but also to their personality. In short, they are tough and powerful. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Maweli, Hammond, Amar and others boarded the yacht and first enjoyed the dynamic music and intoxicating wine. Almost 10 minutes later, a bus, escorted by a Tiger-armored vehicle, arrived at the shipyard dock on time. Then, groups of young, beautiful, and tall Russian girls got out of the car. The average age of this group of girls is no more than 20 years old, and everyone will be screened before being selected. Minors are not allowed, those who are not beautiful enough are not allowed, and those who do not meet the height standard are not allowed. Because of this screening, the group of beautiful girls called by Maweli made these little white hats in the cabin a little excited. Some people even gave him a thumbs up while drinking red wine and said, "Brother Maweli, this party you organized is great. The girls are just my type." Mawey tasted the champagne in his hand, listened to the dynamic music, and then watched the long line of Russian beauties, under the guidance of the bodyguards, board the yacht, and walk towards the cabin. The beauties wore close-fitting evening dresses of various colors on their upper bodies, or off-shoulder hip skirts. They wore black stockings, suspenders, or simply nothing on their lower bodies, showing off their white and attractive well-proportioned legs. When they walked into the cabin in 2s and 3s, and stood in front of Mawey and others, Mawey, holding champagne in his hand, once again experienced what the rights and enjoyment of the rich are. Those pairs of seductive long legs, soft waists, plump double rhymes, and beautiful faces gave men an indescribable visual impact. If you have to describe this impact, there are only 3 words, that is, 30th. Chapter 75 Fireworks Display of the Fighting Nation. In the world of the rich, beauties are always accessories, and will never be lacking. Among these beauties present, many may be goddesses in the eyes of others, but in the eyes of the rich, they are nothing more than foils, to make the party more exciting and more joyful. Just like the red wine in their hands, the food on their lips, and the music in their ears, they are all for their service. The beauties are already in place, and Mawey also told the captain that they can set sail. In June, the highest temperature in St. Petersburg is around 25 degrees. It will be colder at night, about 12 degrees. The cool sea breeze blows on the hull, accompanied by the yacht stepping on the waves and breaking the sea surface. The bright moon hanging high in the sky is bright and round. The night sky is clear, and the stars are scattered, creating a beautiful and romantic atmosphere. Come on, cheers. Mawey raised his glass and motioned everyone present to drink the wine in his glass. Cheers. Everyone echoed, and under the influence of alcohol and music, the party atmosphere gradually became ambiguous and beautiful. The men, under the influence of alcohol, smiled and hugged the Russian beauties around them. The beauties stretched their slender bodies, cooperated with the men's movements, and let them caress them. At this time, Mawey saw 2 Russian girls in evening gowns, standing in the corner, still unable to get used to the party atmosphere. They seemed a little out of tune with the other girls. Are you not having fun at the party? Mawey asked the 2 girls with red wine in his hand. No, it's just that we may be slow to warm up. It will be fine later. A Russian girl with long golden hair said to Mawey without looking him in the eye. She knew Mawey's identity, and that he was a very well-known figure in Russia, so she was afraid that, if she accidentally disobeyed him, she would be in trouble. What are your names? Mawey is actually a slow-moving person. He likes things that are more subtle, and doesn't like the European and American ones who just come up and lose interest at all. My name is Diana, and her name is Vikara. The blonde girl answered immediately. The black-haired girl standing next to her never dared to speak. Their personalities are a bit like reserved Asians, not Russians. The figures and looks of the 2 girls were carefully selected, so there is no need to say more. They are both 19 years old, similar to Mawey. Compared with those white-hatted and bearded guys, Diana and Vikara prefer to communicate with Mawey. There is nothing they can do about it, because Mawey is their compatriot, and most importantly, he is handsome. So when the yacht sailed to a secluded waters and stopped, Diana and Vikara also stayed with Mawey quite quietly, as if they were following him tonight. Mawey didn't care about the girls' little thoughts. When the yacht completely stopped moving forward, he asked the DJ to turn down the music, and then said to the white-hatted girls and Russian girls, "Please be quiet. In order to make this party more lively, I have specially prepared a wonderful fireworks show on the sea." As soon as Mawey finished speaking, Harmon, who was a little drunk, and Amma shouted happily, "Fireworks show on the sea. Brother Mawey, I didn't expect you to be so romantic. I like setting off fireworks on the sea. The scene must be beautiful." After the 2 of them finished shouting, the other white-hatted girls also nodded in agreement. Fireworks on the sea, this is really great. Especially with these lovely and charming Russian beauties, I can enjoy it together. Ha ha ha. I feel quite looking forward to it. Everyone in the cabin, including the group of Russian girls, expressed their anticipation for the upcoming fireworks on the sea. They knew that the kind of romance that Mawey played was very expensive. The more advanced fireworks shows are charged by the minute, and the most expensive is 50,000 yuan per minute for the fireworks group. That is 833 yuan per second. Watching this kind of fireworks, even blinking is a luxury and waste. However, just as everyone was looking forward to it, they heard the whistling sound of helicopter propellers outside the cabin. Then they saw two armed helicopters flying side by side over their yacht. The rapidly rotating propellers of the armed helicopters brought up strong wind blades, blowing the originally quiet sea surface to all directions. Brother Mawei, what's going on? Is there any problem? Amir suddenly sobered up. When he saw this formation, he certainly didn't think that these two armed helicopters were here to help Mawei set off fireworks. After all, fireworks are flying up into the sky. If the propellers are blown up, the aircraft will be destroyed, and people will die. Amir was also worried about the same thing as his companions around him. The fierce image of the Russian army is deeply rooted in their hearts. I'm afraid that a disagreement will lead to a tragedy. Mawei smiled and shook his head. Don't be nervous, we are all family. After that, he drank red wine by himself, waiting for the good shot later. As soon as he finished speaking, the two armed helicopters hovering in the sky flew to the front and turned on their searchlights. At this time, Mawei put down his glass and motioned everyone to follow him to the deck to watch the next fireworks show. Okay, everyone follow me to the deck. The fireworks show will start soon, Mawei said, and took the lead in walking out of the cabin. And then everyone looked at me. I looked at you and followed you out. Then they found that the two armed helicopters just now were used to maintain lighting. At this moment, they were shining their searchlights on a 30-meter long medium-sized yacht. The yacht was 200 meters away from them, floating alone on the sea, and it seemed to have stopped for a long time. The little white hats standing on the deck were a little confused. I don't understand what this armed helicopter, luxury yacht, and fireworks show have to do with. Look at the deck of the medium-sized yacht. There are no large fireworks stacked on it. Brother Mawei, where are the fireworks on the sea? Why are there helicopters and yachts? Harmon asked Mawei, hugging the Russian beauty next to him. He really wanted to know what Mawei was up to, but at this moment, Harmon and others saw the Russian bodyguards around them carrying a black iron tripod at some point. And on the iron tripod was a RPG-like rocket launcher. The little white hats were frightened after seeing this. Some people even took 2 steps back in surprise, trying to stay a little further away from the heavy artillery in front of them. Damn it, brother. Is this an RPG rocket launcher? So this is how you set off the fireworks on the sea you mentioned? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.